From the cobbled classics
Philippe Gilbert, the winner of the Ronde van Vlaanderen.
Cavendish goes into the barriers.
to the drama and celebrations of the 3 Grand Tours.
Matthews bounces to a win in Rodez.
2017 has produced many memorable moments.
Who's going to get it? I can't call it. What a stunning finish.
Now the world comes together for the year's final fling.
Boss has got time to celebrate. She can soak in the atmosphere.
Capturing the prestigious rainbow jersey is the ultimate prize for both male and female.
And Cadell Evans will be in the rainbow jersey. An outstanding result. Michael Matthews is heading for the gold medal here, and he's won it. Can you hear that crowd?
Cycling's superstars make a beeline to Bergen this weekend.
It's Sagan who's going to be the world champion.
The Norwegian city is the capital of the cycling universe with the 2017 UCI Road World Championships.
Armistead collects the gold. It's a rainbow jersey for the Slovakian.
It's here, it's live, it's on SBS.
Hello again, welcome to live coverage of the UCI Road Cycling World Championships. The titles close out a long season for the world's best riders, and this weekend we present the elite road races for both men and women. In a few moments' time we'll cross live to Bergen in Norway to be entertained by some of the biggest names in world cycling, and if the wonderful crowd scenes during the past week are anything to go by, we are in for one spectacular show indeed. Let's welcome our broadcast team for this weekend's coverage as the chase for the rainbow jersey begins in earnest. Alongside me, Dave McKenzie. Macca, welcome back.
Good evening.
And Bridie O'Donnell. Bridie, the last time we saw you was, I think, breaking the world hour record 18 months ago in Adelaide.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have your knowledge for the women's race coming up. Macca, you've returned from the Vuelta a España and the Tour de France. What sets the World Championship apart from the other big races on the calendar?
Good question. Look, I think it stands alone in the yearly calendar for cycling. And I think it's simple. When you break it down, it's that rainbow jersey that all the riders vie for, and the fact that you ride for your nation. So for the men and women, it's an exciting, week of racing. And, a one-day race, it's not a monument, but it's as good as, and if not better. It's a powerful week of racing, and it's the last hurrah, I guess, for a lot of the athletes in the year, isn't it?
And Bridie, does it have different significance for women riders?
I think that because women don't get the same opportunity to showcase their abilities on the world stage yet. And so this is an amazing opportunity for women to be riding as a nation, but also to really give it their all up against the best women in the world. And with the peloton of 150 women, it's an extraordinary thing. And I raced Melbourne World Championships in 2010, a hometown world champs, and I'll never forget it. OK,
you've raced 3 World Championships. We know what it takes to chase the rainbow jersey, but, overall, is this course an all-rounders course, do you think, in your view?
It's shown that the climb, it doesn't necessarily lose everybody the way more arduous climbs do, and we certainly have an all-rounders team in the Australian women. It's been a very contentious selection, as we've all discussed, and to have now a team of 7 women who have varying abilities and can back each other up, and quite a few of them ride in Orica together at the professional team, so they know each other's ability, but Gillow and Hosking, who are non-Orica riders, bring a lot to the team. OK, you'll be joining our very own Matthew Keenan in commentary, Bridie, for tonight's race, and he's getting prepped in our rainbow booth. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks very much, Beeshar. So far in the race, it's been a relatively calm start. We've got 2 riders that have broken away, Lauder from Great Britain and Panton from Sweden. They've got an advantage on just a little bit over 1 minute. And so far, we haven't seen a lot of the Australians at the front of the peloton, which is a good thing, because this year's World Championships is a long one. It's the longest one that we've ever had in the history of the race.
OK, Matt, we've spotted this tweet from Belinda McLeod, who's been following the Worlds this week, and she says, without MW Keenan, I've had to resort to my own brand of highlighting to track the contenders. So what colours have you lined up for tonight, man?
Oh, Belinda, I like your system, but you're missing the clipboard. You need a clipboard as well. The key to start with is the blue highlighter. So we've got our 2 breakaway riders. They're marked in blue. For those that could potentially win this in a sprint finish, and it might come down to a sprint finish, we saw in the under 23s behind the 2 winners a pretty big group come to the line. So we've gone with green. So the fast finishers, they're marked in green. But we've got to be ready for the supplementary breakaway. We've got some of the former winners identified in yellow. And pink is for the emergency. And if all hell breaks loose, we've got the 4-colour option pen. So we should have all bases covered. You'll be safe in here, Bridie.
Oh, that is crazy organisation, Bridie. You're not going to be lost in that booth.
I'm so excited.
Hell always breaks loose in individual road races, so that pen will be getting a workout, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Well, our team will be certainly looking for busy on Twitter tonight, so join us using the hashtag SBS Cycling. Our very own Troll DJ is in the house also for a special Worlds appearance, so join the fun with hashtag Troll DJ and tweet us your song requests, and we'll see what magic Troll DJ can spin. We've heard a lot about the Australian women's team selection in the lead up to this race. Bridie, there's been drama. It's certainly been a soap opera. The how and now of it, the current issues, how do you see it, and has it played out to the benefit of the Australian team?
I think it is good that we have a team of 7 now, and the 2 women that have moved their way into the team by their successful appeals are extremely valuable. We've got Rachel Neylan, who won a silver medal 5 years ago at World Championships and who has supported other riders in World Championships in Ponferrada as well. But Chloe Hosking has been the outstanding rider of this season in Australia. She's had 4 wins and been on the podium 12 times, I believe. So while she's not known to be a climber, she certainly gets herself around the Buninyong course every year at national championships. So this hill is not going to demolish everybody. I think it's a great team that we've got.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And for me, when she got in, I was so happy because I think they've got to roll the dice with Chloe. I think she needs to be a protected rider. She's not the type of rider that they can utilise too much sitting on the front, setting tempo, can they? She's a pretty much close to a pure sprinter, as we see her here, vision of her here winning La Course. I mean, she's a world-class rider and she performs well on a world-class stage. So I just think she adds firepower to the squad.
She's also got that ability like sprinters do, which is to be patient throughout a long race. And as we've said, this is the longest women's road World Championships.
Yeah.
It's going to be nearly 4 hours worth of racing, and she's got that confidence to sit in and wait and as best she can. With the backup of riders like Gillow and Spratt and Sarah Roy, it's actually a fantastic team. I think we are all being confident, of course, about Australia, but we can't knock out the best teams around.
You mentioned Rachel Neylan's pedigree in winning a silver medal at World Championship level, the oldest rider in the team, but what will her experience bring to the group?
It's a real confidence and calmness too, and decision making. I'm not sure exactly who the captain on the road, usually that's Amanda Spratt, but Neylan is such an amazing performer and she's had hardship this year with injury, so I think she's going to bring some calm and confidence to the team.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I think how can you can't discredit or discount the fact that she's been on the podium against Marianne Vos in her home country. So I think that's, you know, a big plus. And I mean, you look at the team, look how well-rounded it is.
Absolutely, I think we can be confident.
OK, what's the best possible scenario for the Australians, do you think? You know, as far as the structure of the race is concerned.
I think we also need to be realistic, which is that if we come into a finish in a small group and Chloe isn't there, Sarah Roy is a good fast finisher, but she doesn't have that HP that some of the Dutch and Italian and even Americans have. So I think best plan is a big group of 15 to 20 riders with Hosking as the protected rider, as Macca said.
Yeah, but even then, looking at the list, Gracie, Elvin, she sort of rings in my head, you know, her ride at Flanders this year, second at Flanders. So, again, they're well-rounded. They haven't got an outright clear leader, have they? And it depends which way the race unfolds. But, gee, they've got so many riders in that team that
and
can
that could
win.
be possibly said for the Dutch as well, because they go in with arguably their strongest ever team at a World Championships. Van Vleuten was outstanding in the time trial. Van der Bergen, obviously, outstanding rider in herself. How do you see it playing out for the Dutch? Who's their leading rider?
This is really the most fantasy case scenario for any team, that you've got 8 women in a team who could all win. Their worst rider is still ranked 15 in the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's their race to lose,
Yeah.
and I think that does put some pressure on them to chase down breaks. Great footage here of Annemiek van Vleuten hugging her mother, who was devastated, obviously, after Van Vleuten crashed
At the Olympics.
at Rio.
It's like, and I've said it before, it's like since that Rio, it looked terrible. It wasn't as bad as what it looked, but it's like she's got these superpowers since Rio, hasn't she?
Yeah.
Because she's gone on to have her best year, her best 12 months of her racing career. She's a delight to watch. She's a delightful person to speak to. And but tonight, the Australians, you know, she's a big rival. She's on Orica Scott. She rides for the Australian team. And to me, she is the one to beat amongst the Dutch.
Bridie, will ego play a part? Because we saw that vision in the time trial where Van der Breggen literally moved from the gold medal seat to Van Vleuten.
That's hard to do. I've had to do that.
And you had to do it. But you know, is that possible barrier for the Dutch?
I think the Dutch have such a history of extraordinary patriotism and fighting for their country in women's cycling that they're very loyal to the team cause, as are Italians. So I don't think we need to worry about that. OK, Bridie, we'll warm up the tonsils. You're about to call plenty of cycling action with Matthew Keenan in the booth, and we look forward to your insights in the race. Let's take a look at the course map, and the course in Norway totals 152.8 kilometres. It offers a bit of everything. The 19.1 kilometre circuit is lumpy in parts, technical in others, with a flat finishing that will offer encouragement to the sprinters, hoping to hold out to the finish line. The legs will be tested on Mount Ulriken, also known as Salmon Hill. It's a climb in 2 parts, a steady drag up a false flat section, and then a steeper drive towards the summit. It looks very well balanced indeed. Macca, how do you see it?
Well, look, as Bridie and Matt both pointed out, it is the longest women's World Road Race Championship ever. So whether that will play a factor remains to be seen. The weather is good, as we can see, so that's a good plus, I think, for everyone involved in the race. But look, the climb itself, it's only 1.5 kilometres. It sort of averages between 5 and 7%. The top of the climb is still 10 kilometres to the finish line. There's a few little dips. It's not purely flat to the finish line. But will that be enough for a big attack over the climb to stay away? They have to then stay away for 10 more kilometres. So, you know, it begs the question, can Chloe Hosking get around this course? I'd love to think so. I think, on paper, Chloe is potentially one of our best hopes, if it can come together as a big group. If not, Gracie, Elvin, her performance in some of the one-day races this year has been exceptional. Yeah. So we've got, the Australian women have got I think they've got a big shot. Yeah. I sense by your comments that you don't think there will be a serious breakaway? I don't know. Look, it remains to be seen. I think what we've seen in the earlier races, the under-23 men and the junior men and women, well, at least the under-23 men, there was more or less, it was a decent-sized group that come to the finish. And I always assimilate the under-23 men to the elite women's race. So I'm thinking that we will see a decent-sized group of women come to the finish. And I think the Australians can have some numbers there, you know. Yeah, look, outside of Chloe, they haven't got a super fast finisher, a pure sprinter, but gee, they've got some talent. So, and speaking of, that's Chloe Hosking on screen now. We just got a quick shot of her there. So she's still in that peloton, so that's good signs. You mentioned before off camera about not being too prominent early on in the race. What's your view on that? Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. Look, I think in the past, the men's maybe and the women's team have played their cards out too much at the front, trying to make their presence felt, you know, getting the Australian names called over race radio. Don't do that. There's no points. There's no gold medal for that. There's only one gold medal tonight and tomorrow night. Make that be the right one at the end of the race. So I think that's important. Keep calm. Hopefully they've got a cool head in terms of their race director and coach in the car giving them instructions. But play the bluff. The Dutch have got the strongest team. The Americans, they've got Corinne Rivera, one of the best sprinters in the world. She's had a standout year. The Italians, of course, Bridie mentioned them. And, of course, the Polish as well. So there's some other strong nations there. Let them do the work. Roll the dice. Perfect conditions we saw in the women's time trial, anything but. It was rainy and precarious for the riders. So obviously this encourages, doesn't it, you know, bold tactics. It does. And look, the conditions at the moment encourage a larger group that will come to the finish potentially. So the question mark on that is, as I said, the distance. It's a long distance, 152.8 kilometres.
OK, well, let's head to our commentary booth, and it's a very colourful sight with Matthew Keenan and Bridie O'Donnell. Matthew, obviously conditions are a lot different from the women's time trial, so it does give rise to a lot of possibilities. What are you expecting in the early stage? We'll be on the early stages, but are you expecting any sudden attacks at this point of the race?
Not at this point, because it is such a long race. What I am pleased about is the fact that it's not raining, and this is a part of the world that brags about the fact that it has some of the highest rainfall anywhere in the world, Bridie. Normally people try to get away from that and boast about the sunshine. So it's a good chance to be able to see the place. But as you look at the nations that got really quick sprinters, we've all spoken about the Dutch and how strong they are. They don't have one of the super quick sprinters. They have all the strong riders. So I think they have to ride a really aggressive race.
There's riders like Lotta Lepisto from Finland, who's there with one backup rider, but she's an incredibly fast finisher. Obviously, we saw the Dane win last year, but she's not had the season she would have liked. But Denmark are going to be riding in support of Did Eriksson, who won last year. But I think that there are some other fast women we need to be careful of, but obviously Chloe is our #1 woman in that department.
We have seen a little bit of Chloe riding up towards the front, which is a good sign that she was towards the front when they were on the climb. So she's riding smartly. And if you can start that climb each lap at the front and finish it at the back, so you go up there slightly slower than everybody else, you're saving energy.
I think also, given the course, there's going to be a tailwind after the climb, so you want to be in the bunch after you've got to the top. You don't want to be dropped and hope to chase back on. You're going to struggle there. But then there's a headwind coming back into the finish area, and we saw that with the women's junior race yesterday. That really played a factor in the finishing section.
There were 2 riders off the front for a long time. We're now down to just the 1 rider off the front. It's Lowther from Great Britain. They've got a strong team, but I want you to put your doctor's hat on now, because they've got a former winner in the race, Liz Dignan, or Armistead as she was known when she did win the world title. She's recently had some really good form, but then she's had her appendix removed as well. So this is a 2-part question. How much of an impact is that just simply the time away from training, even if you didn't have surgery? And then how much of an impact does the surgery have?
Certainly, you know, cutting through your muscular abdominal wall means that you've got pretty bad pain in that recovery period. She tweeted something about how she'd lost 2 kilos of muscle mass with 13 days of bed rest. And she's already a slim and lean person, so she's going to have lost some fitness, absolutely. That being said, a lot of riders go into World Championships nervous and a bit overdone. And a bit of rest never hurt anybody. I got my appendix out at Schoolies Week. I think my mum might have arranged that. So I spent the entire of Schoolies Week at the Gold Coast Hospital. And then I got a wound infection afterwards, so there was no chance in hell I would be racing a World Championships.
So how did that affect your performance at Schoolies Week?
Well, my friends came in and said they were having a great time, and I just remained miserable.
Excellent. Well, not miserable off the front. This is Melissa Lowther, who's just 21 years of age. She's one of the younger riders in the race. She's certainly the youngest member of the British team, which tells us a little bit of the story about what her role in the race is today. To be in the move, although it's just 18 seconds, she's going to be brought back fairly shortly. She's a sacrificial lamb today for Lizzie Dignan.
It's funny, they've gone in ebbs and flows in terms of selecting full teams and not. And now they seem to be back into a phase where they want to take younger riders, some of whom might be track endurance riders, and others who might be on local or national domestic teams, the way our National Road Series functions, to give them a development opportunity. And that's a great thing. They're riding in support of a former world champion.
And they've got a strong team within the race. They've also got Danny King in the race, who's one of those examples that you speak of, bringing it on the track and on the road. So she's got some real speed, she's got the endurance, and she'll be key to Great Britain's chances in this race today.
I don't think we can rule Lizzie out. You know, that woman is so confident, and her form coming into this race, particularly in GP Plouay, where she just blew the opposition away, and the only woman who could ride with her was Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, who's obviously gone on to then win a bronze medal at the World Mountain Biking Champs in Cairns just a week ago.
And the Dutch are attacking already. We're just on 100 kilometres to go. Just talking about the fact the Dutch is the team that needs to make this race difficult. Lucinda Brand just moments ago was riding towards the front, and the orange colours have burst through the screen and they're on the move. This is still a long way to go.
Interestingly, there's Van der Breggen there right at the back, so she might have had an inopportune time to go back to the car, perhaps to get bittens or something, but it's always the way that you need to be careful that you're making the race aggressive, but you could actually be be disadvantaging your teammates depending on where they are. And there may or may not be good communication from some of these teams in terms of timing and what their plan might be.
When the Dutch won it on home soil in 2012 with Marianne Vos, they took the race apart with 80 kilometres to go. They had 2 riders in the breakaway, another rider attacking to go across. It was on consistently. And this is at the front. This is Lucinda Brand, who has made that move. And she comes here with great form on the back of being part of that brilliant Sunweb squad to win the team time trial.
She's also really known for brave moves that often pay off. You know, she was away on the own just with Shara Gillow, I think, in Strada Bianchi. And then she also won a stage of the Giro Rosa, a hilly stage. And she's not actually renowned for her climbing, but she's just so aggressive and opportunistic. Brilliant team rider.
And a look across the shoulder just to assess the damage. Who is going to respond? If the orange colours move, it doesn't actually matter who it is. The peloton is going to respond at some level.
They're all dangerous, and you feel for Lauther because she's probably done her best to be out there on her own, and now she's got this dynamite who's come across with her, and she may not even be able to hold her wheel for a while.
Well, now she's motor pacing.
You can see how strung out everything is, of course, and this is in most likely even that curved section after the start-finish line, meaning that it's still going to be actually a bit of a headwind. So the fact that the pace is on at this point, and women are going to be struggling to get into a good position before that first little bump that is not classified as a hill on the course.
There's a stunning part of the world in Norway. They're in the fjord, they're in Bergen. The conversation at the front. Brand having the conversation here with Lauther. And I think Melissa is saying, there's not a whole lot I can do for you.
I've heard Danon talk in the bunch before about how, she's dropped riders from her wheel and can't understand why they don't pull a turn. And they'll say, I was barely hanging on.
Yeah. Why didn't you work with me? Didn't you notice I couldn't keep up?
But you can see the other Dutch riders are just paying attention near the front with a couple of Italians as well. And Lisa Brennauer is always riding near the front. She's a very powerful German rider. You can see now Brand's just trying to attack the bejesus out of Lauther, keep the pace really high.
And the Italians, because they are one of the really strong teams, and they've got 2 potential winners of this race. Bronzini, who rides for the Wiggle team, she's already been a world champion twice. And Elisa Longo Borghini, who's had the bronze medal. She got the bronze medal back in 2012 when Rachel Neylan was the silver medalist. And she's been so good this year with some big performances, bronze at the Olympic Games last year. Because that team overall is so strong, they have to mark these early moves. Otherwise, they're going to be forced to chase all day long.
I have to say, though, Italians, while they're known for being great race winners, they're also known for being great work shirkers. They don't tend to want to work the way the Dutch or the Germans will, and that can be sometimes a cultural stereotype, but they're just much smarter about conserving energy, and they get on the wheel of the girl who chases down a break.
There has never been a prize given in the medal ceremony for the person that did the most turns in a bike race.
Absolutely.
It's 1 metre on the front is enough, as long as that is the final metre. And now the Germans are starting to launch a move. Going off the front, it is a move being made by Kasper, Romy Kasper, who rides as a teammate throughout the season alongside Chloe Hosking at the LA Cipollini team.
So I actually think that was 58 Claudia Lichtenberg, who rides in the American team Tibco, but it may not be, but she's got blonde hair and it looks a lot more like Lichtenberg, Hausler. But I might be wrong, sorry, but...
It was Kasper.
Oh, okay, great.
Orange helmet from LA Cipollini.
Perfect. Well done.
Thank you. Highlighters.
You can keep your job.
Highlighter pens. They can't go wrong, good doctor. They're everywhere. And now that they've been nullified somewhat, those attacks, the Australian colours are starting to come towards the front. And the rider that you see towards the front for Australia is Rachel Neylan, who of this range, she's probably the rider that you would like to see in one of those early moves.
Absolutely. And look, undoubtedly an amazing climber, but certainly someone who's had a tricky first start to the season. She's been injured.
Now that it's settled, let's go now. So things have settled down somewhat. That attack by Lucinda Brand has been all brought back together. The peloton there enjoying the views of Norway. We're just inside the 100 kilometre to go mark. All is on the line to try and collect that rainbow jersey.
At the front, Macca, is all back together now. Does this suit the Australian team?
I think it does. I think it's good. I mean, yeah, we have seen a couple of little moves, seen a few crashes too, which is unfortunate. But all in all, I think it's good for the Australians. They don't want to show their cards really at all. We've seen them creep near the front a couple of times, but no, so far so good.
Who else does it suit?
That's the problem. It suits quite a few others. But you know, I think Matt and Bridie mentioned Corinne Rivera, the American. She's been outstanding and she's an exciting rider to watch. She's a great sprinter, so for her it suits her. But then, based on the course and the distance, and if it does break up near the end, the former world champion Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, the French woman, she's in good form. She was second in Plouay just recently. She's obviously good for later on. Longo Borghini, the Italian, the 25-year-old. She was third in La Course. She won Strada Bianca earlier this year. And then Lizzie Diamond, she's just had her appendix out, we think about 4 weeks ago. It's amazing that she's even lined up. She is a former world champion. She won in Richmond a couple of years ago. She was third in Strada Bianca, second in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, second in Flèche, second in Amstel, second in La Course, and won Plouay. Like, how's that for CV just this year?
That is just a magnificent CV.
Yeah. So all those women and others, and they mentioned the pole, Nuadoma, who's an exciting 22-year-old who's had a equally, impressive CV this year.
Okay, as we cross back to Matthew and Bridie and Matt, great support by the Norwegians at these World Championships. Obviously, the men's team from Norway is going to be a little bit more prominent than the women, but it hasn't stopped the fans coming out in brilliant sunshine.
They've been out for all the races. They've been out in huge numbers in the rain for the junior races. And now that the sun's come out, they've come out in even bigger numbers. And this is what we want to see at the World Championships. You had the opportunity in Geelong that you spoke about before to ride up Jalambra Avenue with that huge crowd and cheering your name. Whether you were a contender or not, it has to help.
Oh, it was extraordinary support, and it lifted all of us. You know, it really buoys you. So I think it's not a surprise that they're out. And I think also with the Salmon Hill and presenting salmons to all the winners, having them fish for them with bear, it's going to be fantastic.
It is. The race is starting to heat up, a bit more aggression, and each time we've seen some major attacks coming from the peloton, it's been across that small pavade section where they've tried to make a move.
So Megan Garnier's made her way to the front. She rides in the US team and had an absolutely astounding 2016 and has had a much more quiet season this year. She remained in the same team, Bolstomans, but has had obviously great performances by her teammates Van der Breggen and Lizzie Dinan. But, you know, Megan is an amazing climber. She didn't have the Rio Olympics she would have liked, and could have gone in as a medal contender, like many do, but just didn't get that climb the way she wanted to. But such a powerful teammate for Rivera.
Well, she was effectively the world's #1 cyclist overall last year, but a disappointing Rio, and it really defined your season, particularly as a female cyclist last year, those Olympic Games. She's been a little quieter this year, but she comes here with some pretty good form. And clearly, for her, it's not a case of waiting for the finish. If an American's going to go on a breakaway, it's going to be her. If it comes down to a sprint, it's going to be Corinne Rivera. So she needs to be active at this point of the race.
And she did get a bronze in Richmond, so her home World Championships 2 years ago, she had a brilliant finish, but she just couldn't get over the top of Van der Breggen in second or Dinan in first.
So the race is starting to heat up somewhat as they're just inside the 80-kilometre to go mark. For the Dutch, the weather's too good. This makes it a technically slightly easier race in many respects. They want the race to be harder. So this plays into the hands in many respects of the Australians. And David McKenzie and David Beeshar were speaking just a moment ago about the race playing out pretty well from an Australian perspective. If strategically for the Australians, if they can keep the race dull for as long as possible, that's a good thing.
Absolutely. A solid pace where there's moves they don't have to cover or breaks they don't have to be in is actually very good for our riders. And it's not to say that they're not good enough to cover those moves, but they don't need to be sending riders up the road like Sweden has or Britain have or now Norway has. They can just monitor and follow, which I think is the smart thing to do for them right now.
That looked like Mo Berger of Norway, who's just trying to break away. And nobody else is swimming at this point, which is good, because the water still does look very cold.
The fact that this does twist and turn a lot in this section after the start-finish is difficult for that back third of the race. You know, their experience of the race now is so different for them than it is for the front women. You know, those front women are able to look around and they're feeling calm and confident about the pace and which moves they need to follow. Meanwhile, there's 30 or 40 women at the back who are just literally trying to stay in contact.
In fact, this is Susan Anderson, who's gone off the front from Norway, who's just 19 years of age. So she's in her first year up out of the under-19s, and she gets the chance to race on home soil. Why not go on the attack?
Absolutely. She'd be feeling incredibly inspired.
She rides for the high-tech products team.
So it's interesting to see Germany, Australia, Netherlands, America and Britain are tending to be those riders, and there's an Italian rider in there in fourth wheel, who are just monitoring, keeping an eye on what's happening and not wanting anyone of sort of note to get away.
When the controversial decision was made by the Australian team, and Simon Jones, the high performance director, was asked the question as to why have you only selected 5 out of a possible 7, and part of his argument was that there's no clearly defined leader. And in the past, we've seen plenty of riders win the World Championships without a full complement there to support them. But if you look down through that list of Australians now with 7 riders, who is the standout leader?
Well, I think that's the beauty of having a team with potential in many ways. You know, if the standout rider of a team, the one who's going to win the gold medal, punctures early and then has to fight for the first 30k to get back on, your options need to be, you need a plan B, C and D. Everyone who races a bike knows this. And I think that's the beauty of the team we have here. And particularly for some of the riders that are a little lesser known to some of our cycling fans, like Sarah Roy. She had an absolutely outstanding performance at GP Plouay just 4 or 5 weeks ago. She was third behind Lennon and Ferran Prevot.
This is a significant move. The orange colours again of the Dutch, and this looks very much like the shape of Marianne Vos.
She's always monitoring the front and wants the race to be as aggressive as possible. Think back to the London Olympics, which was probably the first time that women's road racing was showcased to the whole world. Her performance in that final lap in London in the rain was absolutely stellar, really aggressive, and her whole team just backed her up.
From her first year eligible to ride the elite women's road race in 2006 through until 2013, her worst result in the road race at the World Championships was 2nd.
I know. I think she's been in the top 10 9 times. Is that right?
7-time world champion in cyclocross.
But the devastation on her face when she didn't win, for example, in Melbourne or in Copenhagen, is absolutely gut-wrenching. So this is a woman who wins all the time, and yet she wants to win every single race she does. She's so tenacious. There's Roy on the front, on the left of the screen.
With the yellow helmet. And Sarah Roy, she is really taken a big step this year. It feels as if she's gone from just in there to a real factor and a real contender to win some big races.
She was actually in the talent transfer or talent ID program that I was involved in 2006. So women from other sports. She'd come from duathlon. She was a young woman, very tall, a good runner, with no real top end at that time. But she's honed some sprint ability, and she's raced in a sort of, a lesser known French team. She's raced in Australia. She's been the Australian Criterium champion, winning in that fantastic Sturt Street circuit, which is a slightly uphill sprint, and had an absolutely great result there. And she's also ridden in the national team in the Tour of Qatar very, very strongly.
And there's a look at the list of the riders just as they went across the start-finish line on that occasion. And the name of Annemiek van Vleuten appearing up towards the front. So again, the Dutch, they've always got, one of their strong riders near the front, which could be any 8 of them.
Now, one country we haven't spoken about is Canada, and Leah Kirschman's name was there. Obviously a very strong rider. She rides in Team Sunweb, so just won her first team time trial World Championship a few days ago, which she was obviously elated with. She rode Rio Olympics in the Canadian team and has been a very strong finisher, frequently on the podium, particularly in the Spring Classics, so early in the season. But now riding for Sunweb, she's sort of really finding some confidence and finding her form.
Wasn't it impressive, the performance by both the Sunweb teams, to win the men's team time trial and the women's team time trial, and the way they supported both those groups equally was really important.
It's just a brilliant examination of how resources and coaching and support and equipment sponsor relationships can actually be multiplied rather than divided when you have men's and women's teams. That's such a powerful team. Also with Ellen van Dijk. Now, she's been a member of all, I believe, of the team time trial teams that have won. So Specialised Lululemon and Canyon SRAM, and then moved across then moved to Bols Domans when they won, and of course now to Sunweb.
And throughout this season, she's been a really important member of the Sunweb team to support Corinne Rivera. And at the Madrid Challenge in the end of the Tour of Spain just recently, a lot of the conversation in the lead up to that was Rivera's going to struggle without Van Dijk. I mean, my reaction was, well, she better get used to it because her biggest race of the year, she'll be the opposition. And here she is. She is the opposition, and she's riding really strongly. But they did pair up to win that team time trial together. And the fact that Rivera was part of that team time trial victory tells us a lot about just how strong she is.
Well, I think also we saw that with Bling. You know, that's what's so exciting about him, that he had not only the motivation and the form to be part of a team time trial, when we all know really that he has a definite gold medal chance tomorrow in the men's elite road race. And he may have taken the option, as we had to see with Sagan, who was unwell, to not race the team time trial.
Now, Michael Matthews is certainly one of the contenders for tomorrow. This is Lisa Klein on the front for Germany.
Klein rides in Cervelo Big Lane. You can see her teammate now moving up to the front.
And
Casper.
this is now Casper who's making a move. The 29-year-old German who's trying to just slip off the front. No big reaction coming. By contrast to when we see the orange colours go forward, Casper makes a move, and now the Dutch are responding.
It's interesting, it's in a section of the course where they're going to be having more of a headwind. You can tell that they're riding down sort of south now on that western side of the course, 6 kilometres after the start-finish line.
And that is Voss.
Of course it is.
And Sarah Roy
with Bronzini on her wheel. They're old buddies, those two.
Multiple world titles between them. Bronzini in the blue colours from Italy. She had a mechanical problem early. There were no major issues with her being able to return because it was very early on in the race. But Bronzini would be pretty keen to mark any move with Marianne Vos in it. There's no question.
Bronzini hasn't quite had the sort of season she would have liked, but, you know, she is such an extraordinary performer. And riding for Rochelle Gilmore's team, Wiggle High Five, means that there are a lot of race winners in that team. And certainly Jolien Dor, the Belgian rider who rides for them, has had a great performance. She's been the winningest cyclist of the year, which is an expression we hear frequently. It doesn't make any sense to me, but I love to hear other people say it.
Yeah, I let other people say it. I don't like hearing myself say it.
Fair enough, Matt. I'm happy to say all the words you don't want to say.
You go with it. Anderson, she's still off the front, leading by just 12 seconds at the moment. This is Ruth Winder from the United States, now riding towards the front, the centre of the picture. She's had a pretty good season as well. Second place finisher in the Tour of Belgium, which the last stage of that went over the Murder Gerrigsbergen, famous climb from the Tour of Flanders. And she was second on that stage, so she's clearly here with some good form.
Well, Ruth is actually Taylor's teammate, and they both ride for United Healthcare. And interesting, Taylor Wiles used to ride for Orica and unfortunately lost a contract with them when she was told that Orica could only afford one international rider. So they kept Van Vleuten, which was obviously a good decision. She's world #1. But it sometimes comes down to those really hard decisions for professional teams. It comes down to budget decisions and who they can support to the best of their ability. And Wiles wrote a long blog post about how she was very upset about it. But she's actually having a great time riding for UHC. She's back living in her home country in the United States. Her partner's a cyclist. And Winder rode in the women's team pursuit team at the Olympics. She's a great track endurance rider.
And they've got a new coach over there in the United States with their track endurance squad, Barry Sutton.
It's going to be really interesting to see how those cultural differences work, and you know, he comes with such a wealth of experience and so much respect from the US that I think he's probably going to find some really new motivation for him.
I think it'll be a good partnership for both. I think it will new lease of life for Gary and a lease of life in many respects for American cycling, a whole lot of knowledge as well. Anderson, the 19-year-old from Norway, the hometown hero at the moment. She's getting plenty of support. She's making her way up the climb, the peloton breathing down her neck. It won't be long before she does get caught.
It's always cruel when a group will just let someone sit out there, and in a way it's almost gifting. They're gifting her an opportunity to be on the front of a World Championships in her home country, which is a wonderful thing for her, and her family and friends and coaches and people involved in her cycling career will help her a lot. There's some hectic bidden handing off.
There was a little bit of an inexperienced looking bidden handing off there as Simmons from Great Britain was having to do the limbo, getting underneath the armpit of one of the soigneurs.
Now, Simmons is the rider who was off the front very early on in the race, and it's something I'm not sure if you spoke about regarding her former career. She was a rower, and she admits freely that when she went to university after school, she put on a lot of weight. She kind of was drinking too much and eating too much, and she's lost 45 kilograms to make the race weight that she is now. 45.
She lost Corinne Rivera.
She did. She must feel terrific now. You know, it's for so many people who get healthier and lose some weight and then find elite sport. She's obviously got an incredible engine coming from the sport of rowing, and we saw her working very hard in those early laps on her own.
That's an amazing transition, let alone to get to this level. Just to lose that much weight is extraordinary.
Well, obviously there's a lot of similar athletic capability in rowing. We've seen it from Cameron Worth, was a World Championship representative in men's under-23 rowing and moved to cycling and has now completed an Ironman, I believe. So he's
and had a win recently.
Doing the triple threat.
And Bradley Wiggins is in the boat rowing.
And growing longer sideburns. He's got some good mentoring, I believe. He's got Pinsent or Cracknell or one of the millions of British rowers that can help him out.
This is a course that if you can get a breakaway to go on it, it's going to be difficult for one nation in particular to get a chase organised because there are so many twists and turns.
Get out of sight, definitely, and we saw that in the finish of the women's junior race. Now that's Ellen van Dijk, I believe, and she's just bridged across now to that Norwegian rider. She's so dangerous, Ellen. Very powerful, highly motivated. And this might be enough to break up that front section of the race with people being worried about her moving off the front.
Strong on the track and on the road as well, Van Dijk. She's a real powerhouse. As you mentioned before, she's been a winner of the team time trial in every team that's won the team time trial since its inception within the World Championships.
She's been a world individual time trial champion and just an extraordinary lead out, obviously. Wins at Qatar a lot as well and very powerful in the wind.
The Canadian colours also towards the front. This is another move again. It's the Dutch.
I think that could be Chantal Black.
It's Amy Peters this time that is making a move.
Yep.
One of the strengths of the Dutch team is a lot of them ride together on the Boels-Dolmans team, which is the team of one of the big favourites for the race, Anna van der Breggen, who last year won the gold medal in Olympics in Rio.
The beauty of this is, you know, it's a really standard way of keeping pace high and then having a teammate counter-attack, as you said. And it just forces everyone to chase. You can see now, it looks like an Australian rider, an Orica helmet there at the front, trying to lead that chase.
Looked like Rachel Neylan.
Could be Neylan. She's such a great climber that it's a good opportunity for her to do that work.
And a pretty good tactic for the Australian team is have somebody go with each Dutch rider that goes off the front.
With her is a British rider, number 39, Hannah Barnes. So that's the Canyon SRAM rider we were talking about. Distinctive long blonde plait that she often has over her shoulder. She's a very strong rider. So she's there sitting on the wheel of Neylan and not looking like she's going to help Neylan do any of that chasing.
Well, Barnes finished 9th in the individual time trial, so she's clearly a good rider to have in the breakaway. And given that she's clearly not the #1 rider on the team, that is Lizzie Deignan, she'll probably wait and see whether this great breakaway does get established, does manage to build up any sort of a lead before she makes the decision as to whether she does or she doesn't contribute to the pacemaking. But this, given the quality of the riders that are going off the front, is the most significant breakaway that we've had in the race so far.
Absolutely, but there's still, you know, over an hour and 45 minutes to go, so there's still a fair amount of high-intensity work.
This is significant. Going out the back door, this is Jolene Dora. She, the blue colours of the Belgium team, she was one of the dark horses to win the race, but she's struggling. The form is not what it was a couple of months ago.
That's really surprising. I would have thought that, you know, if she's well, that she would be definitely there in the finale. So it's possible that she actually hasn't come into this race in her best form.
She'll be joining the Orica Scott team next season, but the form is not quite where it was recently. Just a couple of weeks ago, in fact, she won the Madrid Challenge. Prior to that, she'd finished in 4th place in the Tour of Belgium. So her form was outstanding. Perhaps she's just gone over the edge.
Timing of those sorts of races is so challenging, and of course, you know, if you have contracts and obligations to pro teams, you can't always determine when you want to periodise your training and when you want to peak. And obviously we imagine every rider comes to the World Championships peaking for the World Championships, but sometimes there are other things that interfere with that, or maybe your preparation, your weight, your training, your altitude, your diet, all these factors that have to come into play, even travel, can mean that you don't actually have your best day on the World Championships, and that can be heartbreaking.
This is serious breakaway group of 3 now. Amy Peters from the Netherlands, Rachel Neylan of Australia, and Hannah Barnes of Great Britain. And it's forced a reaction from the Americans. It's still on 70 kilometres to go. It's only a breakaway that's out to 20 seconds. But clearly that's a huge sign of respect from the American squad as they hit the bottom of Salmon Hill to get the chase organised so soon.
And sitting on her wheel was Becca, the blonde German rider, who's also an incredibly experienced rider. She's won World Tour and World Cup races on her own. And, you know, a great performer. She rides definitely aggressively, but is just another wild card, if you like, for Germany. She's not necessarily a rider that they would be thinking they could win, but very powerful. Wiles is definitely working very hard to try and chase, with Winder on her side.
So 3 strong riders off the front. It's Amy Peters who's leading the charge. And they're committed. They're all working well together. There's nobody that looks as if they're going to be just trying to sit on soft shoe and take the easy pedalling option.
Neylan looks fantastic. She looks very comfortable, and obviously she's a climbing specialist, so she's going to be getting over this hill and with a greater degree of comfort, and then not having to do as much work. Interesting, no bar tape? Is that what I'm seeing, or...?
No, there is. It's just been so tightly wound, and it's black. But it looks as if it's almost camouflage. It's got a little bit of a shine to it as well.
It's not going to feel good over the cobbles. Still, that lead is maintaining at around 18, 19 seconds. So, despite the fact that the front of the bunch looks like they are working hard to chase, they're not really making a dent.
It's Charlotte Becker who is on the front, who is leading the chasing for the Germans. I'd imagine for the Germans that their best prospect would be Lisa Brennau.
Elisa Longo Borghini has been dropped, so the Italian rider with an amazing season this year is just losing contact, which is very surprising as well.
That is a huge surprise because the course suits her. She's had a great season. She was the winner of Strada Bianca earlier on this year, but just like Jolene Dora, she currently rides this year for Wiggle High Five. And just maybe on the back of the Madrid Challenge or something like that, a bug has gone through the team and they've come downhill. Or they were together for the team time trial and they've all picked up a bug.
It's very possible.
Tough to make a diagnosis for the good doctor from all the way over
We
here.
could Dr. Google it. That's how most people tend to make a diagnosis.
You go into the doctors with your own diagnosis.
This is what I can tell you I have right now.
Can you just give me the prescription?
Now, an interesting rider to talk about just as we watch the Americans here at the front is Amber Neben. She's the oldest rider in the American team, and she won the World Time Trial Championships in Doha, Qatar last year, but also, amazingly, won the time trial and the road race at the US National Championships in July. Incredible to do the double.
At 42 years of age.
There's nothing wrong with being that age. We're just coming into our peak, women our age.
Hey, I'm 42 years of age. I'm all for Amber Neben. The Americans on the front trying to control that breakaway group of 3.
You can see Spratty, Amanda Spratt, sitting there on the right of screen, just tucked in behind the Dutch rider, looking pretty comfortable.
And not so comfortable at the back of the race. This is Taylor Wiles, who was doing some of that earlier chasing, the American. She's starting to lose contact. Romy Casper, who's been aggressive earlier on. And also slipping out the back door for the Germans. This is Lichtenberg.
So Claudia Hauslab, now she's Claudia Lichtenberg, has raced in professional teams for a long time. A great climber. She's won the Giro d'Italia, the Giro Rosa in the past.
And she's another rider from Wiggle High Five. So we've seen 3 riders from that team who are clearly not at their best.
I think, Matt, we might need to send Rochelle Gilmore a question and ask her what's happening with the chef.
Well, the pressure being applied at the front by Amy Peters. The advantage down just to 9 seconds. So the Americans are really paying big respect to this breakaway group. And this is their first chance to take a good look at how difficult this climb can be and how much of an opportunity this climb can be. Because I expected that with the quality of those 3 off the front, that this would have been an opportunity for them to extend their advantage as opposed to have it been brought back in.
I think what we've seen, though, is so far, 90 kilometres of fast pace. So it's different from doing 8 reps of a climb that's only 1.5 kilometres long at 6% and then having recovery between them. You're riding at somewhere between 35 and 40 kilometres an hour for the other 17.5 kilometres every lap. So your legs are feeling weary. You may or may not have been able to get the bottles of food or the fluid that you needed, and you may or may not have teammates who are around you to help you feel more confident.
Amy Peters in the orange colours of the Netherlands. She's really committed to this group. As soon as they've gone over the top, she hasn't wanted to have any of that hesitation, that moment of pause. She's gone straight through to the front to get the tempo going once again. And quick through that left-hander, just sweeping on through. As for Rachel Neylan, it's like a criterium, but she's having to sprint out of the corner to get back onto the wheel.
We know Hannah Barnes is a really great bike handler, and she's raced a lot in the UK, where frequently the racing there might be a lot of kermesses, and in her younger days would have raced a lot in Belgium as well. So great bike handling skills, and has been on a bike for a long time, which is different from Neylan, of course, who didn't start riding until her 20s.
It makes an enormous difference. It's like trying to take up skiing in your 20s or your 30s as opposed to out onto the snow as a 6-year-old. This is Lizzie Dignan.
Her abdomen looks completely fine.
Having had her appendix removed, how long ago was it?
Apparently 3.5 to 4 weeks ago. I don't know the exact date.
That has to have an impact on your form.
Oh, for sure, absolutely. Interestingly, this is a picture that Rochelle Gilmore had put up on her Twitter page. We've got a little map of the course with some of the arrows that she was using to tell the team where she wanted them to drink. Oh, now, there's just been a crash here on the corner. We can see now 7 riders have gone down, including an American, an Italian, Belgian, 2 Italians.
One of the Dutch riders has gone down.
Not good.
And amongst those that have gone down, this is Chantal Back. Sarah Roy is there for Australia. She's hit the deck. For the Italians, it's Cecchini who's gone down. And at the back, this is Lay from Canada.
A very distressed rider, though, an American looking very number 16. Megan Garnier. That's not good at all, the poor thing.
That is really disappointing. She was so brilliant all last season. She doesn't look good and she doesn't sound good.
I think also when you crash in a really important race, you're so shocked as well. There's Elisa who was off the back. Elisa Longo-Borghini has pulled over to help support 2 of her riders who have crashed.
3 Italians involved in this fall.
So Balsamo, who's crashed. She's been joined by her teammate Longo-Borghini. She doesn't look good, though. Her right shoulder's lost a lot of skin from the jersey. But I think my biggest concern at the moment is definitely for Megan, who looks very distressed.
It looks like she'll be out of the race.
Absolutely.
Which is bitterly disappointing for her. Fingers crossed that long term she's okay. It looks like she will be, but she's in a real state of shock. One of the great things about the World Championships is that it's tribal. It's the one race of the year that you race for your nation. Here's another look at that fall.
So the 5th rider just sort of clipped, I think, the back wheel of the 4th rider's bike, and she hit the deck there, and unfortunately just people coming down behind her.
And Sarah Roy just managed to avoid it in many respects. She didn't hit the deck by the looks of it. She just got the foot out on the side of the road. So fingers crossed that Megan Garnier from the United States is okay. Breakaway group of 3 still out in front. It's Amy Peters in the orange colours of the Netherlands, Rachel Neylan for Australia, and for Great Britain, it's Hannah Barnes.
Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. All of us under its spell, we know that it's probably magic.
It's a great work by Troll DJ to identify Kermit and the Muppets. Tweet us your song requests and we'll see what we can come up to hashtag Troll DJ. We've got a 3-rider breakaway, Amy Peters, Rachel Neylan and Hannah Barnes. Rachel Neylan, of course, from the Australian team, 61.3 kilometres to go. We've seen a crash. Dave McKenzie, Megan Garnier of the United States looks out of the World Championships. A crash on that occasion, and things are beginning to hot up, aren't they?
They are, and that's a real shame for Garnier. She was 3rd in 2015 in Richmond. She was a threat for today, certainly, and she'd be a big help for Corinne Rivera as well if the young American sprinter can get around this course. But for the Australians, this is perfect. So far, so good. I think Matt Keenan pointed out Sarah Roy he thinks she managed to escape the worst of that crash. She might have just clipped out at the very end, so hopefully she's okay. But the 3 leaders here now, Neylan looks composed to me, and this is what we talked about at the top of the show. You need someone with experience. She's been there. She's been on the podium. So they've covered the first move. So far, so good. Now what they've got to look for is the counter-attack. They're only sitting at 30 seconds. It's a dangerous breakaway, and we've got someone there anyway. But they've got to be ready for the counter move. And the Dutch are obviously the aggressors. They've been the ones on the attack.
Okay, and we saw one of the Dutch riders avoid a serious incident with that Garnier crash. Matthew and Bridie, as we come to you in commentary, 30 seconds is oscillated between, what, 29 and around 36 seconds, that 3-rider breakaway. In your view, where does it stand as far as threat levels are concerned at the moment?
The race has moved into its next phase. The 3 riders are out in front at the moment. They're not big threats to take the medals, in my opinion, but it's completely changed the complexion of the race. And we've seen breaks go and things ease up. It won't ease up from now through to the finish.
It's also not a coincidence that breaks happen and crashes also occur simultaneously. People are tense, they're chasing, they want to be in a position that they're not, and so that can mean that they take risks, or they're not always paying the same sort of detailed attention to the front wheel or wherever they're being.
And importantly, Beeshar, we've gone to the supplementary breakaway highlighter pen.
That's brilliant. I'm looking for the green pen to play its part in the next 10K.
Okay, well, unfortunately, a few of the riders that have got the green pen across them as potential sprint contenders have been dropped already or involved in that fall. So a few of them, we now go...
I prefer my diagram, which has already been prepared.
We go to the pen, put crosses next to their name.
Yeah.
Very good. But the race has certainly moved into that next phase, Bridie.
It has. It's pretty exciting. Look, what we've seen also is Elisa Longo-Borghini, the Italian rider who'd been dropped, actually came across the women who'd crashed, and now she's driving that group to bring her teammates back up into contact. So sometimes bad luck can then lead to good luck for other riders. So hopefully she can bring her own teammates back up to the group.
Ruth Winder now at the front for the United States. A bit of action happening once again. The Canadians now starting to attack. This race is really lighting up. Lizzie Deignan is the rider from Great Britain with the yellow helmet on. Takes a look around and figures, I don't want to get involved in that. Not yet. It's a little bit too early for me. Perhaps somebody else could help out. Plus, hey, I've got a teammate in the breakaway. Puts her in a strong position. They have Hannah Barnes in that breakaway group of 3, which is now at the 36 seconds. And for Rachel Neylan, this is a similar situation to what she was in when she did get the silver medal some 5 years ago. And
coincidentally, that also was some good luck for Rachel in that part, that she was in a break that occurred and an enormous crash actually decimated the peloton. You know, it crashed across the road and inhibited quite a lot of riders from moving through. There were sort of mechanical issues that meant that women couldn't even get back on their bikes. So the break she was in got a very handy advantage. So that was some good luck that Rachel had nothing to do with, but also because of her amazing climbing prowess and her ability to not have an obligation within that break, she put herself into the best position. So she's smart and accomplished, and she's hungry and desperate, you know, and that's what you want in an amazing leader like she is.
That smartness, we've already seen that evidence of that. The determination. How much you think she'll get a little bit of extra motivation by virtue of the fact that she got the ride in this race through lodging a protest or an application to try and get selected as one of the 7.
Look, there is absolutely nothing wrong with proving yourself right to the people who are observing Australian women's cycling. We've obviously had a lot of change in Cycling Australia over the last 12 to 18 months, and it was never going to be easy for the new high-performance person to come into the job, and I think it's fair to say that Simon Jones has put his name on people's lips, and not always in a positive way. That being said, it's a hard job, and he's right. He was right about some of those points, which is we shouldn't just send people to make up numbers, and we shouldn't just fill a team because. Now, in this case, I think lots of us did disagree with him. I did as well, and there was definite call for Neylan and Hosking to be in the team. But, you know, we don't want to be a country that sends riders to just attend World Championships. We want a medal.
And Rachel Neylan, she has done that in the past. She was a silver medalist 5 years ago. The Australian women, they've been brilliant at the Olympic Games. 2 gold medals in the road race at the Olympics, with Kathy Watt in 1992, one of the most unforgettable moments in Australian cycling history. Sarah Carrigan again in 2004.
Another unforgettable moment.
It was.
Judith Arndt, you know, giving a rude gesture to the commissaires as she crossed the line, sat up and didn't contest the sprint with Carrigan. So it was very controversial, that amazing win by Carrigan.
And we like to claim Judith as one of ours now as well. Anyway.
Sure, we can take her. She lives in Melbourne.
We'll take her. But at the Olympics, we've had those 2 gold medals, but the men, the best result was Clyde Sefton with a silver medal. As the women go through the start-finish line once again, 3 laps remaining. The Americans still chasing.
It is amazing, though, that we've been racing World Championships for a long time, and the best result we had before Neylan was Anoni Wood in 2005, getting a bronze. And our best other performer would absolutely have to be Anna Wilson, who's gotten so many 4th places that, you know, she probably doesn't want to talk about it. So incredibly consistent, amazing bunch finisher, very powerful sprinter.
Anna Wilson was a silver medalist in the road race and in the time trial in '99. And our first medalist in the women's road race was Liz Tadish back in 1997 when the World Championships were held in San Sebastian. And she was in a 2-up sprint for the gold medal and finished in 2nd place. Just coming to the back of the peloton once again, the Dutch colours, that's Chantal Black. So she was involved in that fall and she has managed to return.
There's a real skill involved in working your way through a convoy, and I'm not ashamed to say that I made friends with lots of convoys in my time racing in Europe. So if you drop from the back of the group, or you've crashed, or you've had a mechanical issue, what's happened is you're often behind this peloton of cars, and you're allowed to use those cars, obviously, to get a sit behind them and move your way up, and some of those cars help you, and some of them actively try to not help you. And it can be dangerous, of course, as well, and we've seen incidents involving convoy cars.
This is mechanics work on the run.
Extraordinary footage of herself doing up her own head stem there.
This is Vida
I hope
Hein.
that's a torque wrench and she's getting it at 5 Newton metres. All those
Doesn't look
mechanics
like it.
out there would be really shuddering to see.
In amongst that convoy, I noticed lots of blue jerseys. There was around about 3 jerseys amongst the Italians. 2 of them were involved in the fall. One of them was already dropped off the back, which was Longo Borghini. The Italians are very much on the back foot from a team that I had factored in as one of the big favourites.
I think you're onto something with this wiggle high five form. You know, sometimes we do see that even though you're racing here for your country, you've still had obligations in the lead up to World Championships. And Madrid was obviously a really important focus for them. They didn't send a team to the team time trial 5 days ago. And so it's possible that some peaks of these women's season has come, you know, 2 to 3 weeks ago when they haven't been able to maintain the rage, if you like.
Well, we've seen 4 riders from that team riding for different nationalities here, all struggling at the back and getting dropped at points of the race. That there's no way on a normal day that they, not even on a good day, but just on a normal day, that they would be getting dropped at this point.
Very unusual. That being said, it only takes one of them to finish in that front group to be in the right position. And that might be Gudurzo. You know, we haven't seen much of her, but, you know, I was her teammate in 2010 when she was the reigning world champion, and I rode for her at the Giro d'Italia, and she was an extraordinary rider and race winner, obviously, but she arrived at the start of the season, you know, out of shape and unfit and overweight, and by July was, you know, in world championship form again.
This is Amber Neben at the back, number 18, the oldest rider in the race at 42 years of age. 11th in the time trial this year after winning the time trial last year.
She also won in 2008. So an extraordinary performer, and has had some challenges, of course, when you race for a country where a 3-time Olympic gold medalist is your teammate, and that's Kristen Armstrong. So it's often hard to get selected or to win a national title.
You can be the 2nd best in the world and not get selected for the national
It's
team.
like your very close friend Fabian Cancellara. I mean, what if you were the 2nd best Swiss time trialist? It'd be hard, wouldn't it?
It'd be really hard.
It's like being Glenn Houseman, this 1,500 metre swimmer that no one's ever heard of.
Rachel Neylan, she's making a name for herself once again. Number 34 in the Australian colours at the front. Anna Barnes it is who's in 2nd position from Great Britain, and it's Amy Peters of the Netherlands who sits in 3rd spot.
So they averaged around 37 kilometres an hour for that first 95k, and yet there wasn't this sort of explosion of attacks. And the pace was just what I'd considered to be, you know, moderately hard, enough to drop inexperienced riders from countries that have had less exposure to high-intensity racing.
And number 15 in the orange colours, you can see towards the back, that's Marianne Vos. She's reasonably easy to pick in amongst the Dutch because she's the only one with the green helmet on and the green bike, consistent with the team that she rides for. She's been pretty aggressive early. She's still only 30 years of age.
I think we've all been watching her win for such a long time that we feel like she should retire, and she definitely should not retire, but that we've all witnessed her winning across so many disciplines and in so many different ways. I mean, we've even seen her winning scratch races at the Olympics by taking a lap, you know, so there's nothing that she can't do. And I think, in fact, when she had her worst season ever in 2015 and she had a lower back injury, people were surprised because she'd never been injured before. She'd never had an injury or needed surgery, and unsurprisingly her lower back was probably putting its hand up wanting a bit of a rest.
In my view, she's the world's most complete cyclist. She's a 7-time world champion on the dirt and cyclocross, 3-time road race world champion, Olympic Games gold medalist on the track and on the road. And when they were going to Beijing, she looked at the road course and she figured, that doesn't really suit me. Where can I win a gold medal? I'll take up track cycling. 3 months later, she was the Olympic champion in the points race.
Outstanding. What exciting news for Melbourne riders is that she's coming out to Melbourne to race the Giro della Donna and the cyclocross race the day before. So pretty exciting that she'll be able to be there and probably have a few beer hand-ups.
And one of her teammates, Lucinda Brand, was just making a move at the front. So the Dutch have got a rider in the breakaway with Amy Peters, and Lucinda Brand was being active at the front of the peloton. They are hell-bent on making this a tough race.
Rachel will start to feel a little more confident now that at least her role in this break is having an impact. Sometimes we can get ourselves into a situation where we're sort of in a break, but nothing really happens. Now there's Balsamo at the back. She was involved in that crash.
She was involved in the fall.
You can see her on her right elbow there. She's lost some skin, and she looks very much like she's in pain and, I suppose, trying to continue.
Well, her and her teammates offered us one of the great moments from the World Championships last year. She won the junior women's road race, and her teammates were standing on the sideline during the presentation and singing the national anthem with some genuine vigour. It was a great moment.
Hard day for these Norwegian riders because there would have been a lot of expectation and excitement leading up to it. And, you know, you obviously want to be in the race. You want to contribute and have your best day. You don't just want to show up and participate. But this is the best in the world, and they're there for a reason.
And the Danish rider that you saw getting dropped then, that was Julie Leith, another one of the riders from Wiggle High Five.
OK, it's time for you to contact Rochelle. I think we need to ask her what's going on.
I'm convinced that there's been some sort of a bug or something that's gone through the team, and they've all come downhill. Because
Flu-vax. It's a flu-vax issue. They haven't had the flu-vax, and they've all got A, influenza A.
She would normally still be in that group at this point of the race. I'm convinced of it. And this is now Alice Barnes, the sister of Hannah Barnes. She's starting to struggle a little bit at the back as well. Tomorrow we'll have the men's race on. It'll be on SBS Viceland once again from 10:30. And Peter Sagan is trying to create history by becoming the first man to win the road race 3 years in succession.
Now there's Lex Albrecht. She's at this back of this group with a Slovenian rider and a Norwegian. We were talking about Canadian riders. Lex, number 66, rides for Tibco, so a team in the United States, and she's been a consistent performer for Canada, not quite of the capabilities of Leah Kirschman. She's there at the back there, just sort of trying to stay in contact. Tibco and its incarnations have been an incredibly strong team in the United States, and in fact we've had Australian riders ride for them over the years, and good New Zealand riders in Joe Kizanowski, and Australian road champion Ruth Corset rode for them in the season that she was the Australian road champion and represented Australia proudly in the US and had great results over there.
So a few of the younger riders that are at the back, they're starting to lose contact. The young French woman was with them as well, Juliette Labou, who was the bronze medalist last year at the Junior World Championships in the time trial. She's finding they're going a little bit tough as they get down towards the deep end of the race. 100 kilometres covered, 52.2 k's to go. Rachel Neylan at the front with that convincing look of determination that she so often has.
So now we've seen Winder take up the chase for America. She's the small rider here with the blue and white helmet at the front. And now with the Swedish rider over to the left, just attacking, basically trying to either bridge across. Now the challenge when you're not in a break is you have to determine, am I going to drag the entire peloton with me? Now in her case she looks like she weighs sub 50 kilos, so that's not always going to be very helpful for them. But do I drag everyone with me, or do I try and get across on my own? And I remember one coach saying to me, you always have to think about, is what I'm doing good for me or my team, or bad for others? You do want your moves to be inconvenient, bad timing, or at least doing some damage to your competitors. There's not much point in dragging everyone with you.
Just a 19-second advantage now for the breakaway group of 3 as they're onto the climb once again, being led by Amy Peters, then Rachel Neylan, followed by Hannah Barnes. Rachel looks comfortable at least. And so too does Amy Peters, although Amy Peters, the hips are rocking and rolling just a little bit more than what they are for Rachel Neylan.
You could see her blowing a little harder. When you look at the way people's cheeks and their mouths move when they're climbing, she's clearly trying to control her breathing, whereas Rachel's looking very comfortable. There's Ashley Moolman-Pazio in the green and gold of South Africa. A great climber. And there's our Australian road champion and bronze medalist in the time trial, Katrin Garfoot.
And the orange helmet, Chloe Hosking, is still hanging in there, and she's the quickest of the sprinters from the Australian team.
Again, like Neylan, Hosking has a point to prove. She has a point to prove not only to her family, who are incredible supporters of hers. Her parents have been following her career for a very long time, but also to selectors and to Cycling Australia and to the fans, that she deserves her position here.
This is Lauren Stevens, who's on the front for the United States. They're playing their cards, and they're making it pretty obvious pretty early what their strategy is. And that is to try and support Corinne Rivera to win this in a sprint finish. And the fact that they've had Megan Garnier crash out around about a lap ago now, it really limits the amount of cards that they've got to play.
Katie Hall, who is an American teammate, is now at the back of that group with a few of the other riders who've been dropped as well, Russian riders who are having some mechanical difficulties. So while there's still riders that, you're in contact, the hard part, of course, once you're up over the top of the climb, is that they're in a fast tailwind section once the descent is finished. So it's pretty difficult to make contact again if you've been at the back there under pressure.
The Dutch rider that sits in 3rd position, that is Janenka Ensing. She's got a teammate up in the breakaway. Throughout the season, she rides with the LA Cipollini team, so normally she's a teammate of Chloe Hosking.
And in 5th wheel in this group, just sitting behind Moolman-Pazio, is Australian rider Shara Gillow. She was 3-time time trial champion for Australia. And this season's riding for Française de Jeune has had a fantastic year. So while she hasn't won any races, she's always been in and around the front group.
She's really grown since joining that team. It felt like it was almost too comfortable for her when she was riding with the Orica team. And now that she's spent a season away with the Dutch team and now with the French team, she's really blossomed and stepped out of that shadow of being part of that Australian family, so to speak, and found her own feet and her own voice on the bike.
I think riding for an Australian team when you're an Australian is both a blessing and a curse. There's no doubt that there are a lot of pressure for Orica riders in January and February in Australia. There's an expectation that they will win all the road time trial and criterium championships, and that they will win the Santos Tour Down Under, and that they will win Cadel Evans road race. And they've been incredibly successful in doing that. But the challenge, of course, for them as well is that they're overseas in a little bit of an Australian bubble, and that they don't always then have those same options, as you say, to kind of grow and cultivate the style of rider they want to be, the types of teammates they have. And I think diversity is always really helpful in an elite women's team.
And she's going to have another Australian on her team next year, as Lauren Kitchen is joining that team. Bit of movement as they're onto the climb. Still the Americans, they're controlling all the chasing at this point. The Dutch are milling up towards the front, just poised in case something does go.
Interesting when you see a lot of German jerseys in the back half of this group. Now, obviously, this is the peloton. There's probably now only around 40 riders left in this group, 40 to 50 riders. So I'm sure all the Germans are still there, but to see them all at the back is a little surprising. And Casper is still hanging in there, number 56.
She's the rider that was pretty aggressive early on.
But we can still
all the German colours at the back. The breakaway just about brought back to heel. Direction coming from the British once again, trying to go across to the breakaway.
Some
with one
sibling
of the British.
rivalry. You think maybe Alice has said to Hannah, not your turn?
Well, the British, though, they're trying to get themselves onto the front foot. And this isn't a closing down. Fresh resources now coming through to the front. This could be Danny King, who's coming across at this point, trying to close things down.
So they're nearly to the top. That'll mean they'll have 2.5 laps to go. So 2 more climbs after this one. This is the 3rd last time up the climb. And you can see that the pace is still controlled. It's obviously, it would be too quick for you or I on the couch, but definitely these women are in control and climbing within their comfort, and certainly not the explosive climbing that we see at the end of Grand Prix Plouay or some of the Spring Classics.
And Rachel Neylan, the Australian, she keeps just looking across the shoulder. She's working with the group without being the sacrificial lamb for the group, the one that really tries to drive it and force the issue.
There's an expression that Martin Barras, the head coach, will frequently say, which is, you know, ride the brake, but don't drive it. Don't be the driving force and try and encourage others. Just ride the pace that's required, and sometimes even shirk some responsibility and you know, soft pedal a little if you're not that interested in the brake staying away. In Rachel's case, her responsibility when there's 3 is to do 33% of the work.
That's clearly the voice that is in her head. She's in the brake, but she's not driving the brake. She is riding smartly. Amy Peters is doing her job for the Dutch.
It's interesting that the peloton has let this 4th rider join, another British rider to join the 3 up the front, but they're really not giving them too much space.
Still the Americans controlling the peloton. Just keeping this breakaway group now at around about 5 or 6 seconds.
Frequently what happens in these circumstances, if you're someone like Mormon Parsio or Gillow and you're riding at the front, what you're really doing is also looking around and listening. You want to listen to see who's actually working hard, who's breathing harder, who's still talking. Dinan's the kind of rider who would start chatting to people on the climb. She's basically giving them a message to say, I'm nowhere near my threshold. And we've all done that in races. You're just basically, you know, trash talking.
The classic one is when you're getting near the top of the climb and everybody else is just starting to rock and roll the hips a little bit, go no hands and just grab a bite to eat of something out of the back pocket.
When was the last time you did that, Keenan?
In a D-grade club race.
No gels allowed in those races.
No. But the Americans are really keen to close this down. Yet, at 49 kilometres to go, they don't need to just as yet. Because once they do, that is just going to incite more rage from somebody else, and probably somebody in the orange colours.
I totally agree. I think you need to let groups like that. I mean, if you're riding near the front, you're staying safe and protecting your rider, although Rivera may be sitting somewhere near the back, as we know. But there's not really much sense in bringing this back now, because for sure Van Dijk is sitting there riding on Wiles or Winder's wheel. Or maybe that's Stevens, my apologies. So Van Dijk has just got an opportunity, then maybe she'll go just after the descent or at an opportunity where the pace is high again, and no one will be able to hold her wheel.
The race just about all coming back together again as the Americans continue to lead the peloton. And unfortunately for them, they've just got that one card to play now because of the crash of Megan Garnier, who last year was the #1 ranked cyclist for a long portion of the season. You can see the Australian colours, Chloe Hosking. She sits here in second last position. She, again, sure, she looks as if she's been dropped a little bit at this point, and she has, technically speaking, but she's ridden smartly. She started the climb at the front and she finishes at the back. She's saving energy every single time they go up that climb.
In 2009, I was part of a domestic team that flew over to China to race the Tour de Chongming Island time trial, which I won, a UCI ranked 1.1 race, and then a 4-day stage race. All the stages were dead flat and incredibly technical and fast, and Hosking was 19 years old and we were riding in support for her, and she was outstanding. You know, all we had to do was make sure she was in the front group with 1 kilometre to go, and she won everything. So I mean, it was treacherous for all of us every stage, but she's incredibly smart. Her bike handling skills are second to none, and she's absolutely confident, which is what you want in a sprinter.
So still those 4 riders just managing to stay off the front. Amy Peters of the Netherlands, Rachel Neylan of Australia, and the Brits with 2 up the front, Eleanor Baker, and it's Hannah Barnes, who has been there right from the very start. As again, we're seeing more moves, and it's the Dutch once again who are trying to light things up. And again, it's Lucinda Brand this time who's at the front. The second to edition of L'Etape Australia by the Tour de France will be on Saturday the 2nd of December, and it's your chance to ride alongside the 4-time Tour de France winner Chris Froome. He's back for more. He was at the inaugural edition last year. He even took his time and he waited by the side of the road and rode with plenty of the people that were taking their time and enjoying the scenery of the snowy mountains. Amanda Spratt, she was also out there. She's currently racing in Bergen to see whether she could go to L'Etape Australia with a rainbow jersey on her back. Get the entries in because entries close on the 23rd of October. To enter, simply visit the website, which is letapeaustralia.com. And Chris Froome, along with myself and Phil Liggett, will see you there on the 2nd of December for the second edition of L'Etape Australia. Back to the race, and there's been a change out in front. Going across for Australia is Gracie Elvin, so it's no longer Rachel Neylan who is out in front. Hannah Barnes is still there for Great Britain. So too is Amy Peters for the Netherlands, and Lucinda Brand has made it across for the Netherlands. This is a strong group of 4.
Absolutely. Elvin's really known for getting in a break and being aggressive and maintaining a good position. We know she's a fast finisher. She had an outstanding sprint to get second behind Rivera at the Tour of Flanders back in April, and she certainly won the Australian Road Championships twice, and that's a very hilly and difficult course to win. Obviously a different peloton size, but aggressive, opportunistic and smart. But what's been really interesting is, again, we've seen footage of the Americans chasing. We saw Amber Neben on the front there again. We've got other teams. Poland now are chasing. There's plenty of teams who've missed out, and the fact that there are 2 Dutch women up the front, just credit to their aggressive racing style.
And the Danes are chasing now as well. So they've got the defending champion, Deirdrickson, and they haven't lost faith in her. She hasn't had a lot of opportunities this season, given the team that she rides for, the Boels-Dolmans team, which is such a strong team. Now, what a team they've had this year. They've had the world champion and the Olympic champion on the same team.
Van der Breggen has sort of won everything, hasn't she? She came into the season with the European Championships on her back, the Euro jersey, and, you know, won all those Ardennes Classics, won the Giro, incredible climber.
She has been outstanding this season, as she has been for about the last 4 seasons. And we speak in glowing terms about the year where Philippe Gilbert did the triple in the Ardennes with the Amstel Gold Race, Flèche-Wallonne and Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Well, Anna van der Breggen did that this year and then won the Giro d'Italia as well. It should be celebrated with the same verb as what it is with Philippe Gilbert.
Absolutely, and it was clear she was disappointed not to win the time trial a few days ago. Obviously outbeaten by a countrywoman, but, you know, there was that disappointment on her face. She really had targeted it all year that she wanted to win that race. So I do think she's one to watch in the finale of today's road race.
Oh, now the race is really changing shape. That breakaway group of 4, they've got an advantage of just on 10 seconds. Big reactions now starting to come from the peloton.
These are the twists and turns that lead into the start-finish line. We've got around 3 kilometres to go till they cross the start-finish line again. And we saw in the women's junior road race yesterday, when the roads were wet and the wind was a little worse, that Bironi managed to stay away. She had a slender advantage, but the 13 women or 12 women chasing her couldn't make up that with, you know, she was out of sight, and that's very helpful coming into the finish.
So 41.5 kilometres remaining. 4 riders off the front. Lucinda Brand and Amy Peters from the Netherlands, joined by Australia's Gracie Elvin, and Hannah Barnes of Great Britain has managed to hang in there with that breakaway group. So her form that she showed with a 9th place finish in the individual time trial is continuing. Now
so
the
there's
Americans...
Winder attacking, yeah, the young, small Ruth Winder, but very powerful, great track rider.
She also comes in here with good form after finishing in 2nd place in the Tour of Belgium, which finished just before the end of the Volta d'Espanya. This is Gracie Elvin out the front. Dual Australian road champion. And this year so close to winning the Tour of Flanders.
The challenge for a rider like Winder or anyone who wants to try and get across is that now there are far too many other teams with motivation to make contact with that break. And they're certainly not going to let her get away. If it was like the first 30 kilometres of a race, they might say, hey, sure, let the American go. It's of no interest. But you can see that, you know, her attacks have been neutralised by powerful riders, and they're not interested in letting anyone else make contact. So she's sort of undone herself in a way, and it was perhaps an inopportune time. There's Hosking sitting nice and comfortably behind the very tall rider. I think that's Chantal Black. And we can see Amanda Spratt in good position too. She's only 3 or 4 bike lengths back behind Hosking.
And Chantal Black, the Dutch woman, in second position as the Danes now go on the attack. She was involved in that crash. Fought her way back through the convoy, and you can certainly clearly still see the damage from that fall that she had.
I think it's great to see the Danes racing aggressively. As you said, I mean, their roster hasn't been as impressive as some of the other countries, but they field a full team, 7 riders, and a lot of their riders have a lot of experience and they're riding in good teams. So it's not that they don't have that capacity to do well again. I suppose it's just that Did Eriksson has had a quiet season.
But if she hadn't have won the world title last year, we would have said she's had a pretty good season for a 22-year-old.
I confess I had not heard of her before Qatar, that's for sure. It was absolutely outstanding win for her.
This is Amber Neylan still at the back for the Americans.
Interesting thing about Neylan is that she has had some terrible crashes. You know, what people felt were career-ending crashes. She's a very cautious rider and is not renowned for being an aggressive descender or someone who feels comfortable in a bunch. So it doesn't surprise me to see her at the back of the group. You can see now the peloton's pace has ensured that this break of 4 has been shut down, and they're well aware of that. Gracie looks pretty comfortable and she's just paying attention now to what's going to happen next.
So not much energy wasted there by Gracie Elvin. She just looks across the shoulder. She realises that the peloton is about to reel them back in, and the race is now all back together again. But from that moment, at around about 65 kilometres to go, where the Dutch really went on the front foot, the race has not eased off since.
What we're going to see now, there's 2 laps, but of course these are long laps, 19 kilometres. And even though the race might, you know, get blown apart on the penultimate climb, there's still another 10 kilometres to go, and it's going to require the right combination of riders to stay away. And if the riders who've been dropped on that final climb, for example, are motivated enough, it will all come back together. So a big bunch coming into the finish is not out of the question. When I say big, I mean, you know, 15 to 20 riders.
That's big-ish.
It is big-ish. These crowds are fantastic. These buildings are just beautiful.
Oh, the crowd numbers, they're proper big. It's great to see after last year in Qatar, which was so disappointing to see such racing, World Championships, with half a dozen spectators standing by the side of the road and watching.
Well, and to have riders be compromised by oppressive heat conditions, it adds an element that we all can agree from a physiological perspective is important. You need to be able to race well in the heat. But there were riders that were falling down with heat stress, and that's just terrible. Leah Kirschman.
Leah Kirschman now at the front for Canada. And then just sitting behind her was Danny King from Great Britain. As they approach the finish line, they get 2 laps to go.
Now, interestingly, sitting on the wheel of those 2 riders was Rosella Ratto, who's an Italian rider that we don't hear a lot about, but she's actually finished in the top 10 at World Championships 4 times. So, again, another little bullet in the ammunition of the Italian team.
And she can handle pressure. She got the bronze medal in Florence when she was 19 years of age. So on home soil, to come home with the bronze medal is a pretty good performance. And on that occasion, once again, it was Marianne Vos who went out the winner, with Emma Johansson in second position.
It's been strange to have Johansson retire. She has been an absolutely astounding bike rider from Sweden, and this is the first year that the professional peloton hasn't had Emma Johansson racing in it. We've seen her on the podium so many times, and she's never been a world champion or Olympic champion, but has been racing consistently for a decade. So I understand she's still heavily involved in Swedish cycling and doing some commentary work. She's a great asset to the sport.
Chase group of 4 at 45 seconds off the pace. Charlotte Becker was one of them who was leading the charge in the German colours. Not a cloud in the sky. Bergen is showing off today.
So strange compared to the weather conditions that they showed us for the men's time trial and for the junior women's road race.
Fingers crossed it can hold out for another 24 hours at least, and we get the same conditions on both days for the elite road races. Peloton emerging out of the tunnel as they come across the other side of Bergen and onto the bridge. And from what we can tell from over here, just judging by the flags, there's not a lot of wind either.
This morning it looked like they said something between 10 and 11 kilometres an hour from a southerly direction, so really light winds. Interesting to see there now a French rider. I think that could be
Audrey Cordon.
Yep, so she rides for Wiggle, didn't get the bug.
She missed the bug.
She's in a different hotel.
She's on her way off the front just ever so slightly. The 28-year-old Frenchwoman. And the Dutch the first to respond, making sure the orange colours are always there. If somebody wants to make it hard, they'll come to the party.
You can see sometimes these long false flats are actually harder for a lot of these riders because they've come through that tunnel and they almost soft pedal a little to give themselves a break, and that can be their undoing in a position, and things have started to split apart now.
It looks like Ellen van Dijk is trying to go across for the Netherlands. Cordon, it is who leads.
Van Dijk will never die wondering. You know, that woman's attention to what happens at the front of a bike race is second to none.
Smart rider, world champion on the track as well, which is a clear indication that she's got plenty of smarts.
There's Taylor Wiles, the American, so she's obviously in a group that's not in the main contact with the peloton. They're crossing the finish line now, probably over a minute and a half, 2 minutes behind the main group. It's a real shame for Taylor, but she's ridden very hard for America.
And by the looks of it, that's Suzanne Anderson, who's at the front from Norway, who's the 19-year-old who was an early aggressor, showing herself off the front. And for her, this will be a great moment just to try and finish. So she needs to keep the pressure on so she can come through at Bell Lap, close enough to the peloton to be allowed to complete that final lap and say, I finished the World Championships at home. 36.2 kilometres remaining. The peloton really is strung out, and it is slowly but surely getting dwindled down to a very select group.
One country where there's a definite disparity between the performers in men's and women's is Spain. You can just see now a Norwegian rider attacking there off the front. No one's really that interested in going with her. She's obviously trying to make contact.
And Vos goes. So Vos is attacking, and that will cause a reaction. But you're right, though, about the gap between the Spanish women and the Spanish men.
There just haven't been any extraordinary female Spanish riders. Certainly they've fielded a full team, and there are 2 Spanish UCI teams. We've had Australians racing for them. Joanne Hogan, Shara, Gillow. They both raced for Beeshar, a Spanish team. But we haven't seen women who've performed outstandingly or who have ridden for other teams and performed very well. So that's an interesting fact, I think, for Spanish cycling.
And the smarts again at Chloe Hosking. They come to the bottom of the hill, and Chloe Hosking is starting right at the front. She's got the grimace on with the orange helmet, and she's at the front. This is Amanda Spratt now coming around the outside. And Nieuwedoma in the Polish colours, in the red and the white colours. Nieuwedoma, she is one of the favourites. She can win the race today.
Absolutely. Great climber, and had an extraordinary performance at the women's tour to win that tour outright.
Lizzie Dagan for Great Britain.
Danny King's now very aggressively attacking. So she's this incredible track endurance rider, has ridden for Wiggle High 5, now back racing for a British team. And, you know, very, very smart, works very, very hard.
And Vos wants a piece of the action, and Chloe Hosking is going with her. And the Italian, that looks like Bronzini, who is managing to mark that move.
Of course, another Dutch rider, number 10, Janneke Ensen, who rides for Alla Cipollini, the Italian team, is doing her best to try and bridge across.
And Amanda Spratt is also marking the move, sitting there in 3rd position.
Spratt is such a small, compact little rider, and she's climbing very well. She's really, I mean, Amanda Spratt has been in the Australian cycling scene for such a long time, was a junior star, and has been racing professionally for a very long time. She's still only just turned 30.
Feels like she could be a veteran at 30 years of age. Delza is the French woman that is there. There's number 10 from the Netherlands, Enzing. She swings off and takes a look around to see what sort of damage they've done, as it's Danny King who has opened up the gap, but she needs some company. She cannot go on her own.
Seems like the feed is over now, so there's no... Oh, we can just see some vision now of another crash. So another British rider. Oh, no, and that's Neylan.
Rachel Neylan.
Dear me, that's going to be really hard to make contact again, given the situation of where they've crashed just before that lump. The non-hill, as they call it.
The non-hill. The hill that they get for free.
So Vos looked around before, and she couldn't really seem to convince the 2 riders who were with her, Spratt, to go with her, and they weren't really chasing. I mean, it was just letting Danny King go. So now Danny's kind of got this opportunity to try and bridge across.
A little bit of calm at the back of the peloton now that they've gone across the top of that climb. And you can see number 39 for Great Britain. That is Hannah Barnes sitting at the front trying to slow things down after she's had her time off the front in the breakaway. And good to see the Norwegians with 2 riders up towards the front. In fact, that is Suzanne Anderson who's riding towards the front. So the young Norwegian who was aggressive early, she's still in contact with the front of the race and going very well.
I think this has been really smart by the Australian team. Like we discussed earlier, they didn't need to do anything when the race was at that moderate pace. But whenever there's been more than one rider up the road, they've been involved. We've had Neylan, Elvin and now Spratt involved every time, and they're monitoring those breaks, and that's great. Absolutely where they need to be.
It's a good move. This is Danny King, the Olympic Games gold medalist from the team's pursuit. That was at home in London in 2012, where the Brits dominated on the velodrome. Cordon. No, it's not Cordon, in fact. It's Dalzin of France.
If Voss has any weaknesses, I'd say that she's just not very good at bluffing. You know, everybody knows what she wants. She wants to be aggressive. She wants to be at the front. Whereas Dynan has an ability to say, hey, I don't need to chase that down. You go for it.
But the 2 big stars for the Dutch haven't made a move yet. The 2 big stars in terms of this race. Marianne Vos has got the greatest EV.
Exactly. There's Van der Breggen in number 12. You can see her, and Van Vleuten just
and
over
number
to the
14
left.
to the left. They haven't moved yet. So Vos clearly is not the protected rider. And now Danny King is being caught. But she'll be happy with that because she's got 3 strong riders to work with. And lots of support on the side of the road by the spectators.
Gillow riding at the front there on the right, looking really comfortable, and Garfoot just to her left.
You get the gist anyway. Encouraging the riders as they make their way up the climb. This is Jannica Ensing at the front, the 31-year-old who started the season in Australia with a 2nd place finish in the Tour Down Under. And one more rider trying to come across.
Difficult to tell. So now the peloton's just passing underneath that little overpass. So they're putting that at around 12, 15 seconds, I think.
And this is Nilsson. Hannah Nilsson now trying to go across for Sweden.
She actually looks a little like Johansson from behind. Small physique, shorter hair, you know, very similar sort of stature.
I was almost doing the double take.
Yeah.
She rides for one of the smaller teams in the professional peloton, the BTC City Squad. The 25-year-old, though, is yet to pick up a win in her professional career. She's had a couple of close calls. 2nd place finish this year on a stage in the Tour de Ardèche, where the Australian team performed very well, particularly with Lucy Kennedy from the High Five development team.
Incredible climber, Lucy. She's had some great results in Australia, but for her to win that overall in France was just a real breakthrough result for her, obviously.
This is Amanda Spratt. Now it's Jannica Ensing of the Netherlands. As a nation, we spoke about them earlier on about needing to make this race aggressive, and they have not let us down. They have been the ones to really try and take it on.
But you're right, we have not seen Van der Breggen or Van Vleuten at all on the front, haven't been doing any work. And in a way, you could argue they've got 2 wild cards to play.
And we haven't seen Corinne Rivera. We've seen the Americans do all the chasing, but Rivera is just saving every calorie that she's got in the tank.
The other rider we haven't, I've only really seen once, is Cecchini. She's the Italian who rides for Canyon SRAM. She's been an Italian road race champion in 2015 and 2016 and has probably had a quiet season, but is a very professional rider in that she approaches things with an absolute team in mind and rides very well for Canyon SRAM. A lovely young woman too. And married to Viviani, who won the men's Omnium at the Olympics.
Dalzin, the French woman who rides for the Lotto Soudal team throughout the season, she slips to the back of the group. Almost making it across is Nilsson of Sweden. And they're at 32 seconds now. Very quickly their advantage has built up over the peloton. And Amanda Spratt, she's one of the better cards to play for the Australian team. This is a good move for Spratt.
She won the Santos Women's Tour actually in January. Obviously the Orica team are very powerful when they're racing in January, but She's very consistent and very well protected by the team. So she's smart and confident and been around the block. For a rider like the Swedish woman, you know, she's probably been sitting in quite comfortably. She's very small, great watts per kilo. So she wouldn't have been any physical discomfort for these first 8 laps. The challenge will be for someone like her as to how does she finish well. Certainly hasn't had the experience of the other riders.
At the close, that last 5 seconds, it's just there. You can almost reach out and touch them. And you just want to get on the wheel and have a moment's rest. But they've made the left-hand turn and now they're on the climb. There is no time to rest now.
So now I think we need to start looking at where riders like Hosking, Rivera, and paying attention to how aggressively people climb with this second last time up the climb.
And we're just hearing reports of a crash back in the peloton with Katie Hall from the United States of America having a little bit of a touchdown. She's been a rider who's been relatively active, doing a bit of the chasing at the front to try and support Rivera. This is Amanda Spratt now at the front, who is seeing this as a genuine opportunity. This isn't a move by the Australian team of, let's just make sure we're represented. This is one of those ones that you just never know. Something might eventuate. This is Ruth Winder from the United States, who's been doing a lot of the chasing today. A lot of work early on by Winder. And it looks as though her job is just about done for the afternoon.
We're also seeing 2 of the Danish riders being dropped as well. So
now Van der Breggen is going to the front. Nieuwedome follows her from Poland. Next in line is Dignan. Then we've got Van Vleuten. Katrin Garfoot is there. Deirdrickson, the defending champion, is also in amongst it. This is a very select group. Now it's getting really serious.
Absolutely, and you can see there's a significant gap there now between those 9 riders and the women who are chasing. So we have Garfoot in that group for Australia, and there was a French rider too, but I wasn't sure if it was for En Prevot. It was difficult to tell. Couldn't see the race number, but she's sitting there in position behind the Brit, which is Dignan, yeah?
And the fights for the Italians to try and hold on at the back as well. It is a desperate fight to try and hold on.
So that's Gudurzo. Gudurzo is the rider in that group. She's the 2009 Mendrisio World Champion. Impressive. Obviously having a good day.
And it is Pauline Ferrand-Prévot from France who's there. Garfoot is managing to hold on, the bronze medalist from the time trial. In fact, the Danish rider who's there is Ludwig, wearing number 3. Gudurzo at the back. She also picked up a medal way back in 2004. The break now is being caught almost at the top of the climb. Always better to be getting caught as opposed to doing the chasing at moments like this. And Amanda Spratt has got herself in the right position.
Absolutely. So there were 4 joined now by those 8 or so. Amazingly, of course, 3 Dutch riders, 2 Australians, 2 Brits, a French woman, a Dane, and Kasia, the Polish rider.
And this is Van Vleuten who is on the front.
Interesting, her driving at the front there. You've got to wonder if then she is riding for Van Breggen.
She is full throttled. And Katrin Garfoot, who was the bronze medalist in the time trial, their teammates all year long. Now they're the enemy, but Garfoot is marking the move. That's big respect. This is the small group that's surviving. Number 64, recent bronze medalist in Cairns on the mountain bikes at the World Championships.
So interestingly, it is just Danny King. There is Dignan isn't there. So we've got 1 British rider, 1 Swede, 1 French woman, 3 Dutch riders, a Dane, and then 2 Australians. Fantastic for them.
And Janneke Insing of the Netherlands is just trying to hold on at the back as the world champion from the time trial is still forcing the pace at the front. Desperate moments at the rear of the group.
For En Prevot. Interesting.
She's getting distanced ever so slightly, but they have crested the top of the climb. She'll be able to return.
Now, given that there's still 1.5 laps to go, they will all be looking at each other. No one's going to want... Van Vleuten doesn't want a time trial for the next 29 kilometres. Danny clearly is motivated to get on with this move.
Followed by Van der Breggen, the Olympic Games gold medalist from Rio.
So 11 riders here now. We don't know exactly the gap, but certainly they've come over the crest of the climb. That'll be Warwick there, the amazing German veteran. So she's just been distanced. Remembering she lost a kidney in a crash 18 months ago at Trofeo Binder and was back racing, I think, 8 weeks later. Extraordinary.
So she's got plenty of fight in her and she's just trying to stay in contact with the race. But this group It's reduced down to a group of around about 10 or 11 riders, and they have blown the peloton out of the water. Quickly, it has grown to 22 seconds. And look at the body language of number 10.
Ensing, yeah.
Ensing, who was in that group, got caught at the top, and now driving through to the front once again is Annemiek van Vleuten.
So now with these 11 riders, we need to think about, you know, what they want to do for this descent, the fast tailwind section into that start-finish area, and then a whole other lap to go. And the interesting thing will be, of course, the people who've missed out on this group are Canada, America, Italy have a rider there, obviously, in Gillow. Belgium, obviously, they didn't have anyone after door, and her riders, her teammates, haven't been able to make this split. And Germany have missed out.
Well, how good was the timing of Hanna Nilsson of Sweden to be going across to that breakaway group and just getting caught at the top by many of the big favourites? Perfect.
So really now it's up to Germany, Canada and America to really put the chase and the pressure on.
And Nieuwedoma from Poland now rolls through to the front as Van Vleuten and Van der Breggen, the two Dutch powerhouses, first and second in the individual time trial. And look at the power that has been applied at the front now by Anna van der Breggen, the world's #1 ranked cyclist.
Incredible. Difficult for Nieuwedoma to hold her wheel.
And this is Ludwig at the back of the group, #3 from Denmark.
A great rider who has missed this split is Ashley Moolman-Pazio, the South African. Incredible climber, very small physique as well, but obviously wasn't in a good position when the pace went on that climb. So she's missed an opportunity at the moment to be in this front group.
And this is the French woman, this is Delzin, who was in the break, caught and dropped, and now trying to return.
So frustrating for her. So they're gaining time now with every kilometre, and you can see Trixie Warwick here at the back doing her best to kind of make contact again with that group.
She's chasing to get in contact with the main peloton. Chantal Black in the orange colours, she's done a great job today. Involved in the fall, went in some of the early moves, marked the next moves, made sure those orange colours were always present at the front. And now, one of the advantage, obviously, for the Dutch is they've got 3, but the pressure for the Dutch is that they've got 3.
The Dutch don't mind pressure. That's their amazing beauty. They, you know, if you said to them, "Oh, well, it's your responsibility to win," they'd say, "Good."
And Lizzie Deignan has made it into the group, so she was just dropped off the back at the top of the climb, and now number 40, she has managed to return.
Tenacious, really extraordinary riding.
So 2 riders in there for Britain. Danny King, who's up towards the front. Lizzie Deignan, the 2015 champion, just checking over the shoulder. Number 12, that is the Olympic Games gold medalist from the road race in Rio. That is Anna van der Breggen. And the Italians, they're in there with Gudurzo, who was the winner on a very hilly course in Mendrisio. Just on 26.3 kilometres to go, leading group of 12 with many of the big favourites as they head through the feed zone, and they're just on 7 kilometres before they get the bell, indicating 1 lap to go.
That's the one that I like. It's muddy. The acoustic motorbike. So come on. Get up on your bike. I go on. Get up on your bike. Pedal on, pedal on, pedal on, for miles, pedal on. Pedal on, pedal on, pedal on, for miles, pedal on. I go on. I go on.
Welcome back. Just over 23 kilometres left in the women's road race, and a group of 12 out by probably under 10 seconds now. David McKenzie, including Amanda Spratt and Katrin Garfoot, who medalled in the individual time trial. A couple of quality Dutch riders in that group. Did you expect it to be pulled back so quickly?
Well, look, yeah, we expected to unfold what has just unfolded, and now it's just regrouped, a reduced peloton. The Dutch are still on the attacks. Here they go again. But Spratt and Garfoot look great. The Australian women, they have done a great job so far. They haven't put a foot wrong, apart from a couple of little mishaps, crashes they've had themselves. They've done everything right. They've been animated. They've been in the breaks, but they haven't been putting their noses in the wind too much. That's important. I think they're still in with a huge shot of a gold medal here, and at the very least a medal. The Dutch are still the big favourites, so they've got the numbers. Van der Breggen looks really strong. and she's got some teammates that can back her up as well. But you've got some of the others like Dinan, Lizzie Dinan, former world champion herself. Ferran Prévost, the French woman who's a former world champion, was in that initial group as well. So there's some women there that can challenge as well.
Yeah, it's spectacular scenery in and around Bergen as we cross back to our commentators Matthew Keenan and Bridie O'Donnell, and really getting to the business end now. Matt, what do you expect out of the Australians?
What we've seen from them so far has been ideal. In terms of what I expect, more of the same as what we just saw from Amanda Spratt and Katrin Garfoot. Spratt anticipating the move, and Garfoot, that bronze medalist from the individual time trial, she's got the strength to go with any of the moves. What I'm surprised about, Bridie, is how quickly that strong group of 12 or 13 riders got brought back, and it's because there was, in particular, 2 Dutch women out there, Van der Breggen and Van Vleuten, and nobody else, rightly so, wanted to work with them.
And why would you? You know, if you were a Polish rider, if you were Ferran Prévost, if you're Danny King, you're not going to work with those riders and take them to the finish line. I think also the course plays a lot into the part of that. There's a descent and then a tailwind section where you can easily get caught. So it wasn't ideal for 11 riders who weren't highly motivated, and you've got a very highly motivated group behind with 3 countries, strong countries, that had missed out.
And there's another group that's trying to go off the front again, and Audrey Cordon of France is driving it. She sits in 2nd position, and she has been very aggressive. There she is sitting in 2nd spot. Behind her from the Netherlands, Chantal Black. She's crashed, she's been off the back, she's returned, and she's broken away.
Incredible. There's great tenacity in these riders, and I think this is what I love about the women's bike race being shown live, is that we get to see all of these machinations leading into the finale.
And Hannah Barnes is out there again. If there was a prize for the most combative or the most aggressive, Hannah Barnes would have to take it at this point of the race.
We're just seeing Sarah Roy, the Australian rider, now trying to bridge across from the peloton to these 3 who are out the front, who have a 14-second advantage.
And much like what we saw just moments ago with Amanda Spratt being off the front and in having those big favourites like Van Vleuten and Van der Breggen come across you, gives you a much better chance than trying to go toe-to-toe with them the last time up that climb of Salmon Hill.
I think what we're going to see the next climb, the final climb, is that the group will be smaller, and they'll, of course, be more motivated in the same way with Plouay's to go on with it. She's making it hard for herself, but I think she's at least getting a small advantage, Sarah. A very strong time trialist. And now, of course, Australia's mission would have been to be in every break, and because they missed this opportunity, someone had to go across.
So it's Sarah Roy who's got the job of trying to bridge across on her own. It's a tough task. She's really caught in the middle.
In fact, the peloton can see her now when they're on this straight, and they can see her just going around the corner, and then when she gets around the corner, she's going to be starting to approach that group of 3 in the distance as they approach the start-finish line for the final time.
So when they go through this time, they will get the bell. And a good chance for those that are backing themselves in the sprint of this reduced group to once again just take a look, assess the final few corners, make an assessment as the wind direction and so on as they approach that finish line.
You can see with those flags, though, it is very light winds.
It's very still. Here comes Sarah Roy. Just a handful of seconds behind the 3 leaders. Got that clear look of determination on her face, but the peloton is still being led by the Americans, trying to chase for Corinne Rivera, who is in the peloton playing that patient hand. She has not responded to a single move.
It's always a good sign when you haven't seen a rider at all for the race, and you know nothing terrible's happened to them, and they've never been forced to do any work early on. So 3.5 hours. We're approaching now a time that should normally be the longest duration of one race, a stage race or a one-day classic for women. It's not that these women aren't fit and strong enough to race for 4 hours, it's just that there aren't many races on the calendar that would be 153 kilometres.
The longer racing, it lends itself to the stronger riders as well. So it favours the likes of Van der Breggen, who is the reigning Olympic champion, the world's #1 ranked cyclist. The bell rings for Barnes, Cordon and Black. They're the 3 off the front, with Roy trying to do the chasing and the Americans leading the peloton. and a whole host of Dutch riders still at the front of that group. They will light it up the next time on the climb, surely.
You get the feeling that riders like Vos as well. I mean, she's sort of labelled herself as being a disposable teammate. She might attack aggressively at the bottom of the climb to kind of set off some fireworks to try and initiate and blow out the cannons of some of her competitors.
Well, Vos is the rider in the orange colours that's sitting in about second or third last position at the moment. 32 seconds the advantage for the leading group of three. Well, not a whole lot left in that front of that race.
It's probably around 25 riders now, and you can see certainly still a few Italians, a few Australians, a few Americans, but it really has annihilated the bunch of 150.
And Deirdrickson, for the first time, the defending champion, #1, she's still in there.
Now,
Chloe Hosking just going through.
Just a small gap. She's got one time to go over that damn climb. I was really hoping she was going to make it over in contact, so it's going to be difficult for her, though, in that really small group with a gap behind the peloton.
And Sarah Roy, she's at 11 seconds. Lauren Stevens doing the chasing for the United States. But most notably, then, with some riders from Great Britain and the Netherlands who've got a teammate in that lead group just waiting.
Just getting in the way, really, in front of the chase. Just making sure the pace doesn't get up too high.
And the Spanish, they've got Gutierrez. She's the national road champion at the moment. She's still in that group.
The other Canadian we haven't spoken about is Caroline Canwell. She rides for Bols Domans, very strong rider. And in fact wore the pink jersey for the Giro d'Italia after the first stage, which was a team time trial.
There's another group of chasers being led by Rachel Neylan as they go through to get the bell.
So we saw Neylan crash earlier. That's the reason she's off the back. We know it's not due to her inability to climb with the leaders. She had some misfortune and obviously physically seems okay. Hannah's looking very comfortable, I have to say.
She's had a cheeky grin on her face all day long. She's causing mischief in this race.
She's a cheeky grin kind of girl, for sure.
This is Stevens doing the chasing for the United States.
And there's Gillow sitting in fourth wheel and Spratt just 2 behind her.
And where is Corinne Rivera? Over on the left-hand side. That's as close as she's been to the front. And it's just through virtue of the fact that the peloton is getting smaller and smaller.
Well
so the rear of the peloton is closer to the front. It's the first time we've really been able to see her at all. This is Chantal Black at the rear of the group, who last year was a winner of the Ghent-Wevelgem Spring Classic, which if you've won that race, for most nations coming here to the World Championships, you'd be a real protected rider. But here she's one of the workers. And for Roy, unfortunately, the gap is going in the wrong direction. It was 11 seconds not too long ago. Now it's at 14 seconds.
We've all been in a situation in a bike race where we possibly hesitate just for a second too long when a break goes. And then we know, depending on who our countrywomen are, that it's going to be our responsibility to get there. And the hard part for Roy is that she's had to make that attempt and is riding strongly, but it's not enough to make an impact on 3 motivated women up the road.
And it's a serious chase behind, being led by Lauren Stevens. Sitting just behind her, you can see Amy Peters of the Netherlands. And then it's Annemiek van Vleuten, followed by Katrin Garfoot, is playing a game of me and my shadow with Annemiek van Vleuten. It's a wheel that she trusts.
Absolutely. It's hard to go from your professional team and the wheels you trust and the women you trust to racing for your country. Suddenly those women are your competitors.
That's the damage that's been done to Chantal Black, but she's out the front. She's doing damage to the race. One last break, and then we're back with the final of the Elite Women's Road Race. This is the Elite Women's Road Race. They're on the final lap. They're down to 15 kilometres remaining. 3 riders off the front. Sarah Roy of Australia trying to go across at 15 seconds. Ratto of Italy is also trying to bridge across. The peloton at 34, 35 seconds. Race radio telling us 40 seconds. They're waiting for the last time up Salmon Hill before they unleash.
We saw in GP Plouay, which is a similar style and a similar sort of course 4 or 5 weeks ago, that really the whole group was together and Lizzie Dinan just put pedal to the metal for that final time up the climb, and the only rider who could go with her was Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, and the rest of the group were gapped almost instantaneously. So this lead of 39 seconds for these three riders, while Black is strong and Barnes is a good climber, it's not going to be enough, I don't think. And Roy is in that awful purgatory position of knowing she needs to continue her chase, but it's futile, effectively.
But for those three leaders, it could be enough for them to be caught at the top of the climb and still stay in contact,
Absolutely.
as opposed to be getting dropped from that main group.
And then you've got Dynan has a teammate in Barnes, and of course Black is there to act as a lead out. She's an incredibly fast finisher, a World Cup, World Tour race winner. So to have her there for Van der Breggen and Van Vleuten will be incredibly powerful. You have to imagine Voss, you know, I think she'll try and blow things apart in this final time up the climb.
And the Dutch, they've got three riders now perched on the front, ready to go as they approach Salmon Hill for the last time.
Oh, I'd be feeling sick if I was thinking, oh no, here we go. It's going to be painful.
And look in fourth position, Nieuwe Doma of Poland.
Absolutely.
One of the big favourites.
And Ferrand-Prévot on her wheel. And I think, as you've said, there's Garfoot, although not cornering quite as quickly as the riders coming around her.
Losing a little bit of distance on those corners and a couple of spots as well.
And that might not seem like much, but if you have then moved down to sort of 8th or 9th in the climb, you've just got to work that little bit harder to make contact.
Here are our three leaders. For the French, it's Cordon who goes through to the front. Barnes once again for Great Britain.
She looks terrific.
And in the orange colours, Black, who looks battered but brilliant. And this is Roy. She's closing ever so slightly.
Now remember, this isn't Salmon Hill yet. This is just the non-hill. But it's certainly going to be enough. This is 8 times up, and they've been racing for 3 hours and 46 minutes. This is a long day in the saddle, and you know, on a warmish day for Norway, that's for sure.
Regardless of the outcome for Sarah Roy, this is one of the best performances of her career.
Well, it's her first World Championship. She's, you know, absolutely. Oh, actually, did she race in Qatar? My apologies. So, you know, she's had a great year this year, and I think she'll be very proud of herself.
And now Cardozo is trying to go for Italy. The former world champion. She loves the hills. She won in Mendrisio. It was Cadell who won the following day.
She's definitely got the black shoe, white sock Lance Armstrong from the 90s sort of vibe going on, which we don't see very often, but it's always been a Gudurzo's trademark.
Well, she's trying to cross to what is a little split at the front of the peloton. This is the very front of the race. This is Barnes, Black and Cordon. Behind them, it looked like Garfoot was still in amongst it, and perhaps it was Amanda Spratt as well for Australia. This is Cordon now.
Now, Cordon is quite dangerous. She's a small, very powerful rider. She's ridden on Wiggle High Five and is actually very good friends with Elisa Longo Borghini. They're good mates. And she's a very experienced racer.
She doesn't have a huge amount of wins to her name, but she's been a big contributor to support other riders from that team to pick up plenty of victories. And now she's sensing that this might be her big opportunity. Sarah Roy still trying to close down that gap. She's going the wrong way now. That move by Cordon, it's up the tempo at the front, and Sarah Roy is back out to an 18-second deficit.
And I think we saw what a lack of concentration and a bit of fatigue can do on that smaller little climb, that had just managed to gap things. And we saw, as you said, Gudurzo trying to bridge across when there'd been some gaps and Garfoot had moved into a better position. So Australia's still looking like they have some opportunities and some options.
Sarah Roy sitting in 4th position on the road. Here comes what's left of the main peloton. Almost at the bottom of the climb. The anticipation. Plenty of those dark blue colours with the Italians. They've had some bad luck, a few falls along the way, but they're well represented at the front.
So there you can see Rivera. She's number 19, high white socks, white helmet, small rider with a high cadence, and she's just moving her way there around the left-hand side of the peloton.
And for the first time, she is right up towards the front. She's marking the moves.
So 4 Dutch riders, the Polish amazing rider there, and then on the right, the Canadian rider, that's Kirschman. Still a Norwegian rider up there at the front, number 85, which is very impressive. And Uttrup Ludwig, she's there, number 3, the rider who was in the break earlier on today.
And Amanda Spratt, number 36, she's sitting right in the centre. She's in amongst the Dutch. 4 Dutch riders at the front. This is Barnes at the head of the race, followed then by Chantal Black and Audrey Cordon of France. 24 seconds, that's their advantage on the sole chaser, which is Sarah Roy.
So we know there's going to be, less than 20 minutes to go now in this race, and possibly, 3 or 4 minutes climbing. Maybe make for that 4 or 5 minutes climbing.
Well, now they're onto the climb. The steepest part of the climb is at the start. So that's good news for these three off the front. They can find their own rhythm and wait to see what happens from behind. They can't control that. All they can do is ride almost a threshold for themselves, as this is Amy Peters. Again, the Dutch are moving, but this time it's Amy Peters.
Gillow tries to go with her, and then you can see Garfoot marking Gillow, the Italian road champion.
There's Garfoot.
Sorry, that's Rosella Ratto, is the Italian riding, yeah.
A young Italian who was a third-place finisher in Florence some 4 years ago. And the Norwegian still at the front. This is Vita Hein, who was doing the mechanical work on her bike earlier on.
She's found the right torque.
And now again it's Van Vleuten who goes to the front, and marking her is Nieuwedoma, the Polish star. And in fact, she's not just marking, Nieuwedoma is going. She opens up the throttle, and she's opening up the slightest of gaps, and she's putting the whole race under pressure.
Van Vleuten and Garfoot are able to try and stay in contact, and you can see Spratt there with Van der Breggen just coming around her right-hand side. They've totally passed Sarah Roy, but Nieuwedoma is absolutely giving it everything.
Nieuwedoma it is who's on the charge, the 23-year-old. She's opened up a gap on most of the race. She's still got a few to catch, as Van Vleuten is struggling to stick with her. Then it's Garfoot, followed by Van der Breggen. The big favourites are emerging at the front, but they've still got three riders to catch.
You can see Ferrand Prevot is leading the chase of these riders that have been gapped, but now it's 50 to 80 metres on a climb, which is not going to be easy to bridge.
And behind the French woman, it's the American, Katrin Rivera. She's got to pull out the punches now and start throwing them.
What's going to be interesting is to know the gap once they get to the top of this climb, but now you can see Van Vleuten is absolutely driving it at the front. And Kasia, the Polish rider, is sitting back a little now.
Garfoot looks okay.
She looks comfortable.
There's Katrin Garfoot. All the way from Queensland. She'll be liking the heat in some respects. German born and raised, but very much an Aussie now.
Definitely credits her husband for getting into cycling, and certainly seems to have tapped into his clearly undiscovered ability until she was in her 30s. So she's an absolutely extraordinary rider.
Here are the chasers. It is Perron-Ferrot at the front, followed then by Rivera. Next is Ludwig. Then it's Spratt, followed by Gudurzo. And now at the front, Cordon, along with Barnes and Black, are about to be caught. So at the front, it looks like there will be 7 riders with 3 Dutch women.
Extraordinary. We knew they had good odds going into this event. You know, they had 9 women out of a field of 150, but to have 50% then of the winning move, what's looking like to be the winning move, they've still got to make that 9.5 kilometres after the top of the climb.
Brilliant ride by Hannah Barnes at the front for Great Britain. She has been brilliant throughout this race, marking everything. And now, just as they make the catch, Van Vleuten goes again. And me and my shadow, it's Katrin Garfoot. She's right on the wheel. Now Van der Breggen trying to power over the top. She does. First and second from the time trial, working in unison. Look at the body language of Van Vleuten. She's kicking and gouging, just trying to stick with her compatriot.
Interesting, though, that she didn't let her get a gap. You know, sometimes we let a teammate get a gap if we can be the second wheel and just kind of let them edge away so that others have to chase. But Van Vleuten was sort of doggedly chasing, which is understandable. Cordon's now been gapped.
But they're at the top of the climb. Cordon will stick with them. Nieuwedoma is contemplating going again, but it's Van Vleuten who does it. Every pre-race interview you do with Annemiek van Vleuten, she describes her race tactics the same way. I hope it's hard at the start, hard in the middle, and then we'll go full gas at the finish. Kasia Nieuwedoma, she's the one that really got it going on that climb. When she went, it was the Dutch that found themselves on the back foot.
Such an explosive climber, and I mean, we know that climbing is all about watts per kilo, and so many of these elite women riders can climb at extraordinary powers for their very low weight. Some of these women are climbing at around 50, 52 kilos, and the power they can generate is just fantastic.
And here come the chasers.
Australia very well represented still here in this final lap, which is really fantastic.
But the gap is significant.
Now, the women, of course, who've lost out of this are the Americans, the Germans, Canadians,
this is the tactic.
and Italians.
This is the tactic that the Dutch needed. They had to get away from Katrin Rivera. but they've got a few problems. There's some quick finishes in here.
Well, certainly we know Hannah Barnes is definitely a quick finisher. We've also seen Garfoot win races she's won in the Tour of Qatar. Interestingly, though, when she won her stage of Qatar, she almost sort of did a Cancellara. She just drove off the front of the bunch. So it wasn't so much a bunch kick that she just was a motorbike. Incredible power.
Well, that's okay.
It'll work for her.
The 35-year-old wearing number 31. Riding at the front, she's marked all the moves of Annemiek van Vleuten. That has been the clear strategy all day long, and to this point, it has worked.
You're right, Cordon's made contact again, and we'll definitely get a little bit of respite here now with the descent. So we know that the road heads north. They've got a tailwind, and then there'll be some of those winding roads, still wide, an opportunity, but definitely for those technical
Van
riders.
Vleuten now goes. The Dutch with the numerical advantage, they'll have to keep on attacking. And Garfoot doesn't even get out of the saddle, just ups the tempo ever so slightly, and she's back into her shadow.
She looks very comfortable, doesn't she, Garfoot?
She did it with ease, with real ease. And Nieuwedoma, she's marking Garfoot. She sits in third position. And Barnes, well, dare we say it, Barnes would be a very deserving winner of this race. She has been outstanding. In fact, she's animated the race more than anyone else.
Absolutely. In fact, Beth Duray, who's the Australian woman working as team manager for Canyon SRAM, was definitely targeting Hannah Barnes as a rider in great form leading into this event.
Now it's Chantal Black who was attacking. So the Dutch woman who's been involved in the early attacks, she's crashed, she's fought her way back, she is on the charge. Here come the chasers.
So we have Gudurzo, Uttrup.
Willemsen is there from New Zealand.
Yep, I picked her as one of my top 10 riders, so she definitely needs to finish top 10.
Rivera is there, and at the back of the group it's Amanda Spratt.
And Ferrand Prevot, incredible chase group.
Spratt doesn't have to chase, nor does Ferrand Prevot if she chooses not to.
Absolutely. This is a nice little lead that Chantal Black has got. And the beauty, we discussed this earlier, that the beauty about the Dutchies is that they will want to counter-attack each other, and whomever wins is the winner. You know, there's no sense that someone should win.
And now it's up to the others to try and get themselves organised. And you can see there's conversation happening here at the back. Cordon is in the blue colours, number 61 of France, trying to talk to Annemiek van Vleuten, whose simple response would be, it's not up to me. It's up to you.
And the challenge frequently for riders who are great climbers are that they're not necessarily the kind of athlete who can generate great power on a flatter road or be impelled to chase down a competitor. So now you've got these women looking at each other, riding across the road, and there's very likelihood that, you know, Gudurzo's group are going to make contact.
And that creates more indecision. As now we can see Nieuwedoma, number 51. Well, she's not sure what to do. She knows that if she does the chasing, then she'll be attacked by one of the other two Dutch women in this break. They're coming to a standstill, and Chantal Black is riding away potentially with a rainbow jersey.
Absolutely. And look, she would be a deserving winner. As you've said, she's had an incredible race and a great couple of seasons, and is an amazing contributor to Boels Domans, her professional team.
Cordon checks across the shoulder to see the progress of those chasing from behind. Barnes does the same at the front. Chantal Black's not looking over her shoulder. She's only got eyes for the finish line in Bergen.
And being out of sight is a huge advantage. You know, mentally then they're unsure. They might be getting information over the radio, but if they can't see her, it just feels a little bit more impossible to be able to make contact again. You can see now Barnes is having a go. She wants to. She's probably sick and tired of waiting, and she's certainly has a strong work ethic, Barnes. So she's clearly motivated to do something.
Well, she hasn't done much waiting so far today. She's done plenty of attacking, and she's doing the same again. And now, number 12 sitting at the back, Anna van der Breggen. She will stay last position the whole time, so nobody can catch the Dutch by surprise.
Now remember, she won the Olympic road race a year ago in a small bunch kick, but she also won Le Course by just riding away from people the first year of Le Course in the horrible rain, second year of Le Course, and just rode away from the peloton on the Champs-Élysées to win that in a dominant fashion.
Well, you can see that Dutch road title that she won this year. That's the only individual race that she's won this year. The rest of her victories, they've been in team time trials. So the Dutch national champion is potentially just 5.4 kilometres away from being the world champion. And she came in here, when you looked at the 8 riders from the Netherlands, Chantal Black, workhorse. Chantal Black, world champion.
But as we discussed, you know, all of their riders had the potential to win. Frustrating situation here for the riders that are outnumbered. Interestingly, though, Garfoot is definitely not looking as tense as the other 2 riders.
But she's not working. Black now out to a 23-second advantage with just 5 kilometres to go. And some real indecision amongst that chase. Getting into town with these twists and turns, that is that opportunity where she is out of sight. And the road, you can see it's just been freshly laid for the World Championships. It's smooth and it's fast. This will feel like a long 5 kilometres. Now she hits the cobbles. This will just be like racing on the red clinker bricks at home.
We saw Julius Johansson, the Danish men's junior rider, this morning in a similar situation. He was away on his own. He even described the fact that he had to be more patient than normal. But once he got onto this cobbled section with 4K to go, it was for him like a European individual time trial.
Van der Breggen sitting at the back. She'd be delighted with the current situation. Barnes is at the front. Nieuwedoma, who made the race on the climb of Salmon Hill. Cordon, who's been aggressive. Then Van Vleuten, the time trial world champion. And sitting in second last position is the Australian Katrin Garfoot, who doesn't look like she's prepared to work with the other 3 at the front to do the chasing.
Now, the challenge, of course, is that maybe now that we can see Rivera, Willemsen, Ferron-Prevost, Spratt, Uttrup and Gudurzo. So this is a very powerful group of women, and they're not far behind that group that are chasing down Black, or in fact, they've made contact now. So this is totally changing the dynamic.
And there's a big group also coming back into contact. And could there be enough time for somebody to get teammates organised and chase down Chantal Black?
Well, at 40 kilometres an hour, we're looking at around 6 minutes so of work. So it's somewhere between 5 and 6 minutes, depending on the wind and the bike speed.
It's doable.
Absolutely doable. This could be a group of 25, 30 women coming in together behind Black.
And all the work that Black has done throughout the race, the crash as well. And now Nieuwedoma is seizing the moment. She knows that she's running out of her chances. She goes again. She's got the slightest of gaps. Van Vleuten is chasing. They haven't been caught yet by that big group, so they need to go before they do get reeled back in.
Van Vleuten and Nieuwedoma are actually making Katrin have to chase now, which is interesting. So she's certainly doing some damage despite her small stature. Impressive attack now by Kasia.
Kasia Nieuwedoma of Poland being chased down by Annemiek van Vleuten. It's then Garfoot, followed by Van der Breggen, as Barnes and Cordon have been distanced just ever so slightly. 13 seconds, 12 seconds now the advantage for Chantal Black. She's starting to fade.
It's hard. Once you've crashed, and the adrenaline of your initial attack has worn off, she'd be starting to feel, pain and definite fatigue. But the beauty for her is that she's got the win in sight. And she'd be having the Dutch team manager screaming in her ear.
And you can see the commitment of Van Vleuten and Van der Breggen to support Black in victory. There's no selfish riding at all by those 2.
Absolutely. They would always choose 1 gold over, 3 in the top 6.
Number 8, Chantal Black. Well, the Chinese would be thinking that it is the lucky number, and she's in with a chance. 2.8 kilometres to go.
I think we can all be very grateful that the weather has been so kind as well. I mean, there were crashes, as we saw Paul Matty Fasnacht crashed yesterday in the junior women's race.
Barnes is now going again for Great Britain. Van Vleuten, yet again, is doing the job of trying to close things down. And this could be the opportunity for Nieuwedoma, sitting in 3rd position, to launch that counter-attack with Garfoot to go with her. But slightly downhill, it's too fast. She needs a bit of a rise.
Also, a lot of them are showing some caution on some of these corners, even though they're quite wide and sweeping. But that's because a lot of it is around road furniture and a change of surface. You're going from concrete to bitumen to cobbles with some potholes. So they need to be so careful. We saw a pretty awful crash in the time trial of the junior women, where it looked like she may have gone into a pothole and, took a huge chunk out of the side of her leg. Lauren Dolan, the British rider, and that was very, very gruesome.
That was horrible to watch. It looked like it was Hollywood makeup. It was so horrible to look at. At the back, number 12, Van der Breggen. She's been tightening up the buckles on the shoes.
Barnes threw her bidden off her bike over the railing there, so everyone's doing their best Garcia as well, throwing off a bit and trying to minimise the weight of the bike. Still no doubt, you know, less than 3 minutes to go for Black with a 22-second advantage. You know, I think that hopefully she won't be snatching any defeat from the jaws of victory.
The speed difference, she's doing 42 kilometres per hour. There's indecision in the chase at 35 kilometres per hour. They're looking at each other. They're contemplating a spot on the podium. Chantal Black, well, she only wants one spot, and that's the middle spot. And she wants her national anthem to be sung at the end of the day. Barnes still on the front, followed by Nieuwedoma. Then Van Vleuten. Garfoot is the next in line, followed by Cordon. Van der Breggen at the back of the group, as it is Black who is making Bergen her own.
Less than 2 minutes now of suffering for Chantal, and it's been an absolutely outstanding performance by her.
And the tactical game at the back here, Garfoot is looking like she's trying to drift to the back so she can attack and catch them by surprise, but the Dutch wisely are not letting her. 1 kilometre remaining for Chantal Black, the 27-year-old from the Netherlands, who came here as one of the big workhorses and is now on target to go home as the big winner.
You can see the skin there of her upper thigh that after the crash earlier on in the race, she's obviously going to have some pain in her hip and her elbow. It's been such an impressive race from her.
She's home now, surely, inside the last kilometre. The Norwegians are cheering a Dutch woman on her way towards victory.
What a week it's been for the Dutch riders. It's just been outstanding.
They've dominated. In the elite races, they've dominated.
And what a way to finish. You know, Solo having time to celebrate. You know, I love that people still look over their shoulder to make sure, and there's just daylight there, which is just thrilling for her. Just 400 metres now.
The Norwegians are in full voice for a Dutch woman as she's on her way to the biggest victory in her career. She saw the inflatable rainbow jersey just onto the right-hand side of the road. In 200 metres, she's going to step up onto the podium to collect a real one, and she'll wear that for the next 12 months.
Oh, so happy for Black. What an incredible result for her. You can see she's just so filled with emotion.
And she's going to be taking home a little bit of Norway with her. She's leaving a little bit of herself on the roads of Bergen, but it is Black in Bergen who is brilliant as she becomes the world champion. A look of disbelief for Chantal Black. Who would have picked it? And now the close down has happened in the race for the silver medal. It's Van der Breggen who's at the front. She's leading out for Van Vleuten. The Dutch are trying to go 1-2, 1-2-3. Nieuwedoma is also in the sprint. Garfoot is looking for another medal. Garfoot charging home for second place. It's Garfoot who's holding on. She takes the sprints. She collects the silver medal, and that'll be bittersweet.
What a performance by Garfoot. Absolute. And Did Eriksson, last year's world champion, gets on the podium again. That is outstanding. Incredible race by the Australians. I'm so impressed.
This might take a while to sink in.
What a way to win the race, huh?
Tears of joy, tears of disbelief.
There's Lucinda Brand.
It'll be a big celebration tonight. This is Trixie Wallach of Germany making her way through to the finish line.
Bronzini now crossing the line, over a minute behind.
And Amy Peters also in that group. She'll be pretty happy. So the Dutch, so far in the elite races, they've won the time trial with Tom Dumoulin and the men. They've won the women's time trial and second place in the women's time trial. Now they've got the road race.
And Sunweb, is that a Dutch registered team?
It's a German registered, but it's a Dutch
incarnation.
It's a Dutch team. And Marianne Vos, how happy is she?
Pumped.
That is an outstanding result.
What a team result. They were outstanding team.
They had all the pressure. That's the Olympic champion. Congratulating the new world champion. Incredible.
What a media scrum.
And the time trial world champion Oh, it's a fantastic moment. Biggest win in her career prior to this was taking out Ghent Wevelgem last year. She'll go to Ghent Wevelgem next year with the rainbow jersey on her shoulders.
What a finish by Garfoot. Really outstanding power there to generate that at the end of 4 hours.
This is the moment where it starts to sink in for the new world champion, Chantal Black. She's left Bark on the road in Norway. She's taken a little bit of Bergen home, and she goes down in the history of cycling as one of the world champions on the road. That must be the warmest hug in the history of her life. You're allowed to cry.
Incredible. So happy for her. She's a wonderful young woman and such a team player.
Team play. She did so much teamwork earlier throughout the day. And Deirdrickson in third position. Last year's winner. She gets back onto the podium. That is brilliant. Van Vleuten in fourth. Then Nieuwedoma, who made the race on the climb, in fifth position. So the riders that we expected to be in the mix, certainly from second down to fifth, were there. But I never would have anticipated that Chantal Black would have gone home the world champion.
Norwegian rider making the top 10 there in seventh position. Absolutely brilliant for her and for the host country.
And this is what events like the World Championships are about. One of the young Colombians getting an opportunity, and for her, this is an enormous win. She finishes the World Championships. And here comes Rachel Neylan, making her way across the line. That was with Romy Kasper of Germany. Two riders obviously involved in a lot of the action early, but also involved in one of the crashes. So Norway has delivered for the elite women's road race. As coming across the line now, we can see the Australian Chloe Hosking. It was another Australian, Katrin Garfoot, collecting the silver medal, but the winner was Chantal Black. David Beeshar and David McKenzie. Don't tell me you would have picked that.
Absolutely not, Matthew Keenan. That was a great call to Matthew and Bridie O'Donnell, offering some great insight, and that was as courageous as you'll ever see, Matthew, in a bike race. Yeah, you can't, we'll be excused for being biased towards the Australians, obviously, but the Dutch, we said it at the top of the show, they were the powerhouse, they were the team to beat, and we said amongst the eight of them, they had a winner. Or of the eight, any of them could win, and Chantal Black, none of us would have picked her, but she was brilliant. She was absolutely brilliant, and she crashed. She was the workhorse. She was there as the super domestique, and in the end, she won. But then you made the point off air as well. I mean, her two teammates, Annemiek van Vleuten and Anna van der Breggen, in that breakaway, they were instrumental in thwarting the chances of that group across the top of the climb, and in particular, Nieuwedoma, the Polish woman. Wasn't she sensational on the climbing? Her attacks were incredible. But the Australians, full credit to them. Katrin Garfoot, she rode the perfect race. She just lacked one or two more Australians at the end. But they all did the best job they could do. Sarah Roy, Gracie, Elvin, Rachel Neylan, and then, of course, Amanda Spratt was there right till the end. She just couldn't get over that with that group the last lap, but they should hold their heads very high. Just a further word on Katrin Garfoot, 35 years of age, German-born, but competes for Australia. Only started racing in 2011. I know. What a story. Yeah, it's incredible. And from the minute she stepped on a push bike, they knew that there was some serious talent in Garfoot, and she comes away now from the World Championships, bronze in the time trial, silver medal in the road race. I mean, that's probably one of the best, if not the best, performance we've had from an Australian at World Championship, Road Championships. Absolutely. So it's brilliant. Let's have a look at the highlights of the race, and it was action-packed. There was a few incidents, obviously a lot of agitation by the Dutch, but some courageous riding. And you mentioned Chantal Black. After the crash and the further agitation, we thought, the elastic band is going to have to snap at some stage, but it never did. No, the Dutch were relentless, and you can see here, this is where
I think it was Black who went away in the last lap with the other two breakaway companions. We always thought it was going to come back. They did open up a good lead. It was Cordon, the French woman who went on the attack, but then Neuerdoma, the Polish woman who I mentioned just before. Wow, she's sensational. And we knew she was good, but gee, she saved her best for last. And she unleashed that big attack on the final climb, which bridged them across. But Black, she kept her cool and she played the team role, you know. And when she went on the attack first, it was on Annemiek van Vleuten. She was probably the one that I thought was the big threat today, and she was. But they had the numbers, and when Black went clear, her two teammates just covered the moves. You know, it was just simple brilliance and strength in numbers, and that's how you win a world championship. You need a strong team around you. You can't do it one out unless you Peter Sagan. Even he's had some great teammates. So Chantal Black, she's a deserving winner.
In the end, it was a comfortable margin for the Dutch woman. But do you think there was a lack of self-belief away, from the chasing, the key chasing figures in wanting to close that gap? Well,
the problem was, as we see Garfoot there, brilliant sprint by her to take the silver medal. And look at that peloton. You can call it a peloton because it was a large group in the end that joined that group. And the celebrations for Black, she can't believe it, can she? She's in shock a bit because the team, she's working for a team, or she was at the start of the day, a team of champions. But she's one of those champions, and as Matt Keenan pointed out, her biggest win prior to this was Ghent-Wevelgem last year, which was a great result, a great win in its own right. But she hasn't won too much other in terms of big marquee events. So, but look, yeah, back to the breakaway. The problem was they were individual riders, and there wasn't another squad that had two riders from one nation that could sacrifice another rider. So that element of doubt creeps in. You know, after 150-odd kilometres raced, your body's tired. There's that element of doubt. And when you've got two other Dutch women around you, pestering you, following the moves, that's when it makes it difficult. Yeah,
so, well, the Dutch have swept it, Mac, haven't they? Van Vleuten won the time trial.
Yeah. And
now Black in the women's road race. And let's now hear from the winner.
When we look at the stage here you were in, where you crossed the line, the shirt was ripped, you crashed during the race, you're the world champion. Can you believe it?
No, I can't believe it. Really, everything happens in the race, and when I crashed, actually it took pretty long, and I also was in a lot of pain on that moment, and I thought my race is over. But yeah, I thought, yeah, maybe I can come back, and then we see what I can do. But it was not really the plan that I should win the race. I just want to make the best as possible for the team, and yeah, and then I came in a good break, so that was a good thing because then I could come over the climb. And after that, I just followed my heart and I stayed away. Yeah.
What happened in that group where you were with Van Vleuten, with Anna van der Breggen? Did you talk to each other? What was the plan at that moment in the final lap?
We didn't really talk to each other, but we knew what to do. We were 7 and 3 of us, so yeah, that means we should attack. We can't wait for the sprint, especially not with Hannah Barnes in, and I was already in the break. So Annemiek attacked first, and everyone was reacting, and then I thought, okay, this is a good moment, and yeah, I don't know what happened. I think they didn't follow or they waited too long.
And it paid off. You've already won some very, very nice races, but a world champions title, that's something. It's a fairy tale for you.
Yeah, it's really a dream, and yeah, I can't believe it.
It's the victory of yourself. It's a victory of a fantastic Dutch team as well, I suppose.
Yeah, we had a really good teamwork, and everything was as planned. Everyone was strong and we raced aggressive. And yeah, it's also a lot of pressure because, you know, when you are in the break, you have to win. And yeah, luckily I was solo, so that makes a bit different.
Can you believe you're going to wear the rainbow jersey during the whole season?
No, I can't believe it. No, I was already super happy that I had the national champ jersey this year, and now I have the rainbow. It's a dream.
Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Well, that's Chantal Black almost in disbelief. I think she's stunned because many expected, all the experts expected Van Vleuten and also Van der Breggen to be fighting out the finish for the two Dutch hopes, but she took her opportunity. That was the key, wasn't it?
Yeah, and don't you love those stories? She's crashed, she's on the deck, she's thinking, my race is over. OK, I'll try and get back on. I'll get back on and we'll see what happens. You know, you love when she plays out, sort of animates what happened for her in the race. And then she talks about on that final lap when the first to attack was Annemiek, her teammate. And then she said, OK, now seems like a good time. And she said, I don't know what happened behind me. Well, nothing happened. You were just too good and too strong. And I love victories like that.
Yeah. One question I will be asking Matthew Keenan, has any Australian woman medalled in both the time trial and the road race at the same World Championship?
That is a good question. I don't
know the answer.
I would say I don't think so.
No.
We'll let Matt Keenan answer that one, though. But no, that's brilliant from Katrin Garfoot to get the bronze in the TT and the silver today. I mean, that's a massive ride. And the Australian women, it's one of the best performances they've put in. You know, they've had a silver before with Rachel Neylan 5 years ago. But today was such a great team effort. It really was, and they should be proud of their efforts.
And Matt and Bridie will bring you in with all the controversy surrounding the Australian women's team. Talk us through the performance of Garfoot, the fact that she's only been racing, for 6-7 years on the road as a serious competitor. Just a tremendous performance.
It was. Can I answer your question first about the medals? So in 1999, Anna Wilson got the silver medal in the time trial and in the road race. And then the following year in the Sydney Olympics, she got 4th in the time trial and the road race. So 1 year she misses out twice on the gold medal, and the following year she misses out twice on a medal at the Olympic Games. As for Katrin Garfoot, it felt to me very much like the silver medal for Simon Gerrans at the World Championships in Ponferrada, where there was that one rider up the road, and she had to make the decision, do I chase? Because if I do, I blunt my sprint. If I don't chase, I mightn't get a chance to sprint for first place. So she had to take a risk. She took the risk. She didn't get the win. She was the strongest in that group and got second place.
You can see she actually stopped pedalling half a metre or so before the line. She was still so powerful that Did Eriksson couldn't come past her wheel. And as Matt said, she didn't do any excessive or unnecessary work in that group of 6. And we saw Barnes and the Polish rider really doing their best and feeling frustrated, but she was calm and just monitored the wheels of Van der Breggen and Van Vleuten and did everything she could. So a brilliant result. And I think also credit to Neylan, Elvin, Spratt, and Roy, who worked really hard, and we saw Gillow and Hosking, doing their jobs. It was a little harder than we had hoped for a rider like Hosking, but a lot of other sprinters missed out as well.
But I think that Katrin Garfoot will lose a lot of sleep over that result.
Yeah, I don't think she could have done much else though, Matt. I think
she'll still lose
she had to roll the dice, like you say, and play the. Not so much the bluff, but maybe rely on the other breakaway companions to do the work, because if she did work, and I don't know if they would have brought Chantal Black back, I don't think they would have been organised enough. So I think for Garfoot, you're right, she'll lose a bit of sleep, but she can...
But any attack she would have made would have been neutralised by one of the 3 Dutchies.
Yeah. It wouldn't have been an attack. It would have been trying to get an organised chase, which I just don't think would have eventuated.
Even in hindsight, I don't know what she could have done to have won that race, given the strength of the numbers of the Dutch. But she was so strong, so convincing in that sprint for second place. I'm telling you now, she'll lose sleep.
She will. But Bridie, what about her race craft? And she's 35, but as far as an international race is concerned, she's still pretty raw, isn't she? Former track and field athlete. Where was she 10 years ago?
Well, I think we see this a lot in Australia, that women transfer across from other sports. Neylan's done it, Roy's done it. And so if you've been developing your engine in other ways, in rowing or running, triathlon, then you do have that great physiology. And we know women in their 30s and 40s continue to have great race craft and strategy from a physiological point of view. You're right, skills and technical ability-wise, we often are limited when we start cycling later in life, and we don't have those same abilities on the bike. Of course, if you're crazy strong, then you often can get away with not being as technically talented because you can ride in a better position or ride at the front longer. And we've seen other other riders like Emma Pooley, who haven't been as technically proficient. She started riding later in life, but so ridiculously strong that they just ride on the front a lot. So the other beautiful thing about her is that she has a bit of a neo-pro approach, which is nothing to lose. You know, I've quit my job. My husband fully supports, you know, emotionally and financially and all those other things, her prospects of being a professional bike rider. So she's got supportive family. She's got a great team around her. She's got a German work ethic. So, you know, that's very fortunate for Australia that she decided to take the green and gold passport.
Yeah, tremendous story, isn't it? And Macca, I suppose it all goes well for Michael Matthews tomorrow, doesn't it?
Well, let's hope so. Let's hope so for the men's team. I mean, it's a great warm-up, isn't it, for the men tomorrow? But no, the women, they were brilliant. And just that little bit of vision we saw of Sarah Roy, that was probably the only small error the women made. They missed that break of those three girls that went, and that was Chantal Black, who was in, and Cordon, the French woman, and I think it was Barnes, those three. They got caught on the top of the climb. But if Roy had have been able to get to that group immediately, she might have got over the top of that final climb with Katrin Garfoot, and then she may have been able to be the workhorse on the front and bring it down to a sprint. So that's where the numbers game really, you know, played into the Dutch's hands, and obviously the Aussies lacked those numbers at the end.
Yeah. What have we learned? And I'll get Matthew's sort of feeling on this. What have we learned as far as, given the conditions, if they're the same tomorrow for the men's road race, about opportunism in this type of situation? You know, bravery, tactics.
Yeah, good question. Very good question. And look, the top of the climb, we said it at the top of the show, it's 10 kilometres from the top of the final climb to the finish. Someone like Peter Sagan can attack over the top and not get caught to the finish line. He's that good. He did it in Richmond 2 years ago when he won his first World Championship. He probably didn't need to. He would have been the quickest guy at the finish, but he did. So, yeah, an opportunist can win. Will numbers play a role? I think definitely. I think in the men's race tomorrow, look, it's a lot longer. It's 250, 270-odd kilometres. The legs get a bit tired on those last couple of laps, and that 1.5 kilometre climb suddenly turns into a mountain. But the numbers will still play a big role, and so for the Australian men, yeah, that'll be a big difference.
And Matt and Bridie, you've broken the world hour record. About Chantal Black, just reflect on her determination and just tunnel vision of just emptying everything she had on the course in those last couple of kilometres.
I think that the beauty of her approach was that she knew that this was about team, and she knew also that sometimes it's about luck and timing, that countering each other and one woman attacking and then waiting for that to be brought back and go again. You're never really sure which one of those attacks is going to be stick, but as she said, you've got to follow your heart. And I think everyone who loves cycling loves a story like this. We love favourites who win, but we also love men and women who have been striving and working for others and doing what the right thing to do is for other teammates, get an opportunity like this, and then they ride their heart out to a rainbow jersey that they get to wear for a whole season. And there's nothing more beautiful than that.
Yeah, and Matt, did you gain any or glean anything sort of tactically that may carry into tomorrow's race for the men?
Yeah, numbers are going to be important, which for Peter Sagan would be a concern. I know he's won it for the past 2 years without any teammates, but this course looks, from what we saw today, where numbers are going to be more important than what they have been for the past 2 years. So that will be a small concern for Peter Sagan. And then we saw the ride that was put in by Nieuwendamer, the Polish woman who really tried to break things up. Peter Sagan will be hoping that there's others in the race that try and do that. And for Michael Matthews, follow those guys. Don't try and be the man that breaks it up. Be the guy that just sticks with them and play a patient hand right up until that final lap.
Yeah, and look at the crowd. They've just been absolutely superb. You mentioned it more than once in the call, and tremendous setting around Bergen, but they certainly have supported these World Championships, haven't they?
Oh, there's more spectators there than they'll get at the World Cup in Qatar, Beeshar.
I reckon you're right. I reckon you're 100% right.
Gee, that's a little stab, I think.
It's been after the World Championships in Qatar last year, where it was like Apollo 13. There was no atmosphere at all at those World Championships, which is a great disappointment. And part of the great showcase for the sport, any sport, is seeing spectators enjoy it. And we got to see that today.
Absolutely. And in force too. The Norwegian men won't be shrinking violets tomorrow, Matthew, in the men's race, will they?
No, and they're a chance. They've got One of the challenges that they've got is who works for who. I think Edvald Bosenhagen is their best chance, but Alexander Kristoff wants to win as well.
OK, this has been tremendous. We'll get you to call us through the presentation of the women's road race. A great theatre in the first of the major races on the road.
The anthem is underway as they're about to make their way out to collect the medals, the ceremony process, and the greatest moment in the career of the woman in orange, Chantal Black. Trying to contain the smile at this point. It will burst with pride, no doubt, when she steps up and has the rainbow jersey on her shoulders, the gold medal around her neck, and then the national anthem of the Netherlands.
Award ceremony of the UCI Road World Championships, Women's Elite Road Race.
Medaljeceremoni for UCIs verdensmesterskap på cykel, damer, elite, fellesstart, landeveisritt.
The medals and jersey will be presented by Monsieur David Lapartien, President of the International Cycling Union. Les médailles et le maillot.
The recently elected president of the UCI, who won a convincing vote.
I know, 37 out of the 45 votes. Pretty extraordinary.
VM-trøya blir presentert av herr David Lapartien, som president I UCI, det internasjonale sykkelforbundet.
In third place and winner of the bronze medal, representing Denmark.
På tredje plass og vinner av bronsemedaljen fra Danmark, Amalie Didriksen.
This was a brilliant result for Didriksen, the winner of the race last year. She was quiet, she was patient this year. She missed the split on the climb, but she stuck to her guns and sprinted to third position. That is a big result.
Absolutely. And as you said, you know, if she hadn't have won Worlds last year, we would have just considered her to be a developing young woman finding her way in a really strong team.
Australia.
På andra plass og vinner av sølvmedaljen fra Australia, Katrin Garfoot.
Bronze medal in the individual time trial, a silver medal now in the road race, and she's right to smile. She should be extremely proud of not just what she's achieved today, but what she's achieved the entire season.
It's been a big success for her development, and Martin Barres' sort of support of her as a rider. You know, really a brilliant finish to her.
Champion and winner of the UCI gold medal, representing the Netherlands.
På første plass, verdensmester og vinner av UCIs guldmedalje fra Nederland, Chantal Black.
She's been to a lot of world championships where she's stood by the side of the podium and heard Marianne Vos get introduced as the world champion, and now it's her.
I think every cyclist has their rainbow jersey fantasy, and for this to be coming true for her and putting that on is just wonderful.
The flowers will
There's
be
two unique things that make the World Championships stand out from all the other races. Number one, you ride for your nation, so it's got that tribalism. Number two is for the next 12 months, everybody knows the race that you won. But you don't get to go to every race with that cobblestone from Paris-Roubaix or the trophy from some other race that you won, but you wear your trophy for 12 months.
Every race you're called up to the start line. Every race people want to take photographs with you. Riding in a team with the world champion in 2010 was incredible.
Flowers for Katrin Garfoot as she steps up. She was frustrated as she went across the line. That opportunity missed, but as I mentioned before, even in hindsight, I don't know what she could have done to change things. As Chantal Black steps out in the rainbow jersey, she's on the top step of the dais. She's in position number one. David, it's back to you.
Thanks, Matt. And Matt and Bridie bring us all the action from the women's road race and some great insight throughout the whole event. Dave McKenzie really does wrap up a tremendous spectacle, sporting spectacle.
I'm worn out. It's been a big day. It's been a big day and a big night, but it's been fantastic. And Look, women's cycling has just come a long way in the last decade, and you know the talent now and the young talent that's coming through is just so good to watch. It's exceptional, and yeah, it's been a fantastic race, and they put on a great show, didn't they?
Absolutely. We'll catch you tomorrow.
We will do. Look forward to it.
Okay, Macca. Live coverage of the UCI Road World Championships doesn't end here. From the women to the men, tomorrow is the chase for the rainbow jersey, and it hits another gear. Live coverage starts at 17:50, streaming online, and the TV coverage here on SBS Viceland kicks off at 10:30 p.m. That's Australian Eastern Standard Time. Australia's hopes are with Michael Matthews, and the Zwift Cycling Central podcast is available weekly from iTunes and SoundCloud with host Christophe Mallet, Dave McKenzie and guests. So get listening. It is a very good listen indeed. As always, stay with Cycling Central online and through Facebook and Twitter. It's been a tremendous women's road race. We look forward to the men's. Until next time, from Cycling Central, it's bye for now.
Right. When you call, I forgive and I fight. Because of the moments I play in the dark. We were wild and fluorescent, come home to my heart. In your car, the radio up. In your car, the radio up. We keep trying to talk about us. Slow motion, I'm watching our love. I'll be your quiet afternoon crush. Be your violent overnight rush. Make you crazy over my touch.